Order. I want to welcome everybody to the February 5th Board of Commissioners meeting. Ask you to please silence your cell phones, and we'll try to do the same up here. If you want to follow along with the agenda, there's copies of the agendas in the back of the room. We'll start out with a moment of silent reflection, and then Commissioner LaCroix will lead us in the pledge. And I would just ask for your prayers for Serenity Denard. She's the 9-year-old girl that's been missing for a couple days, and the search continues on for her. Just ask for your thoughts and prayers for that. Thank you.
Amen for that. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Commissioner LaCroix. Also, Commissioner Hancock is with us via telephone today, and welcome, Commissioner Hancock.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, the first item of business will be to review and approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second from DeSanto and LaCroix. Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Yes.
Hadcock,
Aye.
Roskinick,
Aye.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye. Just for your information, we need to do a roll call today when we're missing a commissioner from the dais itself, so you'll see everything being done by roll call vote today. Consent calendar.
Good morning, Commissioners. Holly Hennies, Commission Office Manager. The Board of Commissioners uses a consent agenda to act on non-controversial and routine items. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and one vote of the Board. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of a board member or a citizen. Today's consent agenda contains the following items. Approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of January 15th, 2019. Number 6 is to acknowledge the filing of petitions signed by at least 25% of the eligible voters within the proposed district, and to set an election date on the question of formation of the Twin Rocks Road District to be held on March 24th, 2019, as submitted by the auditor. Number 7 is to approve the corrected resolution to discharge county aid liens with no activity for 30 years, as presented by the auditor's office. Number 8 is to appoint Mr. Alan Van Chove, Joyce Bauman, Patty Bruner, Matthew Auden, and Dallas Voss to the 2019 Extension Advisory Board. Number 9 is to schedule a public hearing at 9:15 a.m. on February 19th, 2019 for Budget Supplement SP 19-007 for the General Fund John T. Vakurovich budget. Number 10 is to authorize the Highway Department to enter into a service contract agreement with the South Dakota Department of Game, Fish, and Parks for snow removal on Whitetail Loop Road to 236th Street. That's submitted by the Highway Department. Number 11 is to declare the 2016 Lund Boat hull as presented as surplus property for the purpose of turning over to the insurance company, as submitted by the Sheriff's Office. Number 12 is the approval of the permit to occupy the right-of-way and the request for road closure/traffic control for the 2019 Deadwood-Mickelson Trail Marathon, as submitted by Ms. Emily Wheeler. And finally, number 13 is to acknowledge the notice of intent to conduct a raffle by the Team Ellsworth Spouses Club, submitted by Ms. Shannon Duraldi.
Thank you, Holly. Are there any members of the public that wish to have any of those items removed from the consent calendar? Any from the commission?
Mr. Chair. Item 8, please.
Which what?
8.
Remove item 8 from the consent agenda by Commissioner LaCroix. Any others?
I was going to 8 too.
Okay. So we will take 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 on the consent calendar. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second from DeSanto and a second by Ross Connect. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
DeSanto,
Roll call.
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye, motion carried. Now we'll take up number 8. Commissioner LaCroy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry I jumped in there. I didn't look down the line to see if we had any others. But the only reason I had this pulled is so we could recognize the appointments and let them introduce themselves. I'm in support of them. I think they've done a good job, and they've taken their time to come here today to see us through. So that's the only reason why I pulled is if we can have them come forward. If that's okay with the chairman.
Absolutely. Let's introduce yourselves.
Good morning. I'm Patty Bruner.
Joyce Bowman.
Good morning, I'm Matt Odden.
Good morning, Alan Van Bakov.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Commissioner Ross Connect. You.
I was just looking at these interest forms, and I noticed that one application is not signed, so I just wondered if that was something that should be addressed.
Holly, can you answer that?
Yes, sir. It was submitted, and I will get his signature.
Okay, just wanted to make sure we had all the bases covered.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate each and every
Chairman?
one of you serving. Yes, Commissioner Adcock.
Yes, I'd like to congratulate all the people that were appointed because we really have an awesome board, and we've added one more to that board. And the interviews, we had some really good, passionate people that are on this advisory board, and I'd like to thank them all for their service.
You bet. Thank you. Thank
Mr.
you very
Chair.
much for being here.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner
I
DeSanto.
too would like to thank everybody for applying and welcome Alan, and I'll be looking forward to working with you.
Thank you, guys.
Look for a motion to approve.
Move for approval.
Got a
Second.
motion to approve number 8. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
And a second from Ross Connect. Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye, motion carried. At this time, we do have executive session scheduled for personnel matter, and so I would take a motion that we,
Move to go into executive session.
Commissioner DeSanto moved.
Second.
And a second from Ross Connect.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
could we add
Commissioner
that it's for department head evaluation?
Yes. Please. Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye, motion carried. We will return shortly.
Executive session.
Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Probably not back on yet.
Probably not on yet. Sorry.
oh, that's
I
okay.
went too quick. There she
And Ms.
is.
Holly. Can you hear me?
Yes, Commissioner Hadcock, we've got a motion to come back into regular session, and we're just calling roll on that right now.
Thank you, sir.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye, motion carried. Commissioner LaCroy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would make a motion to award the Natural Resource Director, Scott Guffey, one performance step effective 4/1/19, grade 23, step 6 to 6/5, 48.41.
Second.
Second.
Got a motion by LaCroy, second by DeSanto. Further discussion? Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye, motion carried. Cindy, items from the auditor.
Good morning, Commissioners. Cindy Moeller with the Auditor's Office. We have just a few supplements for you to act on this morning. The first one is Supplement 19002 for General Fund Treasurer's Office Budget in the amount of $33,000 from unassigned fund balance.
Any questions on that?
Move for approval.
Got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Further discussion? Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item.
That is Supplement 19003, General Fund Health and Human Services Budget Supplement for $116,921 from unassigned fund balance.
Move for approval.
Got a motion. Is there a second?
Second for discussion,
Second for discussion.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner.
Only thing I want to point out for the public is that this is coming from the Leona M. and Harry B. Helmsley Charitable Trust, a grant that we received earlier.
Thank you, Commissioner. DeSanto.
Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Hadcock.
Yes, do we have, or can we have maybe even at the next meeting, a update on this grant and what's happening with this grant money so far? Meaning what they've used it for and what their progress is on this grant.
Okay.
Maybe
Barry
buried in the audience.
Tice is
he could
coming
update
forward.
us. Thank you.
Good morning, Barry Tice, the Director of Pennington County Health and Human Services. The consultants actually arrived tonight for their first on-site visit over the next few days. And so we have not paid out any money to this point, but I would say in a month, I could come back and give an overview of what they learned through this first site visit and what they're starting to work on. Might be a good time to give you an update on that as well, if that works.
Okay, Barry, that sounds good. Commissioner Hadcock, you okay with
Chairman?
that?
So Chairman, Barry,
Yes.
so tell me on their first site visit, what is the plan? I mean, what is your plan of action for them to do for their first site visit?
So I don't have the calendar in front of me, but they meet with just over 20 different representatives from various agencies that work with mental health services, as well as they're going to spend an entire morning at the Behavior Management Systems Drop-In Center. And there's individuals who have utilized various mental health services in our area. They're going to do conduct some questions with them as well. And so I can I'll forward to the entire board the schedule. We start the meeting tomorrow morning at 6:30 in the morning, and then there's meetings throughout the day with certain individuals from the different organizations in our community. And then once they do that, they'll come back in a couple of months and we'll work with folks from the state, from HSC, and we'll look at working on with some of the closer tribal representatives as well.
Thank you, Barry. I guess I also had you do that for the public's interest, so they know that on those grants, there's been some real work done and some positive work to move forward on this mental health issues that we have for people in our community. So thank you, Barry, for that update, and I think the community appreciates that as well.
Sure.
Thank you, Barry. Any other questions of Barry?
No.
Do I have we've got a motion, don't we?
Yep.
Got a motion and a second on the floor. Further discussion? Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
and Drews.
Aye, motion carried. Next item.
The next one is Supplement 19004. It's a General Fund Law Enforcement Budget Supplement. And you will notice in the motion that we've asked for today, the amount is a little bit less than what we had originally proposed. And that's due to, we actually got the insurance check for the vehicle, so we wanted to match the supplement to the check.
Any questions?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner DeSanto?
Sheriff Tone. How are you this morning?
I got a cold, but I'm doing fine.
Sorry, I won't make you talk too much. What are we expecting to get as far as trade-in on these vehicles? You got a number on that?
Well, in the previous memo, we outlined, the entire set of vehicles we were going to purchase. These are surplus ones because of the insurance, it was hail damage. So the insurance check is being supplemented in so we can purchase other vehicles.
So right now, we're working on the surplus, we're not working on we have a list of units that are gonna get traded on our paperwork here.
Yeah, at the last meeting, you declared a bunch of vehicles surplus for purposes of trading. And then those plus this money goes towards the purchase of the new vehicles.
I understand that. Do you have a number as what we will get for the trade, for the value of the trades?
Give me just a second here to look. Did we get a number from them? I have. Yeah, I don't have it with, but I could follow up and send it to the commission.
Okay, and then one more question. All of these vehicles, with the exception of one, have over 100,000 miles on them, which is understandable why we'd want to trade them in. But we have one vehicle, a 2009 Ford F-250, that has only 70,000 miles on it. Why are we trading a vehicle with 70,000 miles on it?
Yeah. Sometimes we have vehicles that just have been a chronic maintenance problem, sometimes the age of the vehicle. And then sometimes with our vehicles, like I've explained before, it's not just the miles on the vehicle, it's the idle time on the vehicle. You might have a vehicle sit at a crime scene or an accident for 8, 10, 12 hours and never be turned off. So it's idle time plus miles, plus looking at just the maintenance history on the vehicle.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'll forward that number to you, so.
Okay. Other questions?
Move for approval.
Got a
Second.
motion and a second. Further discussion? Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
and Drews.
Aye, motion carried. Next item, Cindy.
Next one is Supplement 19005. It's a general fund detox CCADP budget supplement in the amount of $150,000 from unassigned fund balance from money that we had received last year.
Mr. Vice Chair, for me, I can give you some background on it. The memos.
Yes, you may, Commissioner.
The
or
memos,
Sheriff.
the memos attached, the Rapid City Regional Hospital gave us $200,000. We used $50,000 of that last year as transition funds to get into the facility. The other $150,000 we're going to use to hire a nurse for the care campus. And the goal is that'll carry over 2 years. So you'll see so carryover money from this year into next year. So we got 2 years worth of funding to cover the cost of a nurse for the care campus.
Any other questions?
Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Adcock.
motion to approve.
Got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Further discussion? Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews. Drews?
Aye.
Sorry.
Motion carried. Next item, Cindy.
Next one is Supplement 19006. It's a general fund search and rescue budget supplement in the amount of $42,000 from an assigned fund balance.
Questions, comments?
Move for approval.
Got a motion from Commissioner LaCroy. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second from Ross Connect. Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye, motion carried. Thank you, Cindy. Well, Sheriff, you're in the right spot.
All right,
Items from the sheriff.
I'll just stay up here.
First item. Sheriff Tone.
The first one is School Liaison Officer for Hill City School District. This was approved last year with the commission, and this is just moving the FT and the funding over to this year's budget. It's $44,500.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner LaCoy.
This was under the agreement that we take it out of contingency, if I remember right, correct?
That's correct. The previous commission approved this coming
Yes.
out of the contingency.
Okay. I just wanted to bring that forward. I won't make a motion, but this was in the discussions, and we identified where the funds were going to come from to do this previous.
Any further questions of the sheriff?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
refresh my memory. I see that this says that this was a one-time agreed upon cost that the Hill City School District paid. Will the Hill City School District still continue to supplement this officer in the future?
Mr. Vice Chair.
Yes.
Yes, they will. And if you remember, there was a memo at the time when we originally presented this that outlined the one-time cost and then the ongoing cost. So this is worded a little bit confusing where we talk about the one-time cost. That's referring to the equipment, the vehicle, those sorts of things, but they are contributing to the ongoing cost, yes.
Right, and if I recall, that was approximately $32,000 a year is what they were contributing to supplement?
Yeah, I don't recall off the top of my head, but it was,
Okay,
they had a contribution to it, but again, I can follow up and
Right.
send that to the commission.
okay, thank you.
Further questions of the sheriff?
Move for approval.
Got a motion from LaCroy
Second.
to approve, second from DeSanto. Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye, motion carried. Search and rescue, Sheriff Doan.
Yeah, Mr. Vice Chair, if I may, this was carried over from the last meeting because we had not yet approved the budget supplement, so I asked you to carry it over till the supplement was approved. In case the supplement wasn't approved, then we shouldn't be buying the vehicle, but the supplement was approved, and we'd request authorization to go ahead and purchase the vehicle for search and rescue as outlined in the memo, or in the motion.
Questions of the sheriff in this regard?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner DeSanto.
I'd just like to point out that search and rescue held an auction, got rid of a bunch of outdated vehicles, and that gained them about $37,500 that added to the revenue for the search and rescue, so that can go
Chairman?
towards the cost of this
Good,
vehicle.
thank you. Commissioner Adcock.
Motion to approve, sir.
Got a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Further discussion? Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye, motion carried. Item C, Sheriff.
Yeah, this is a COPS grant. It's a federal grant. It's a anti-methamphetamine grant that the state had applied for. There were several partners in it. It was Sioux Falls Police Department, Minnehaha County Sheriff's Office, the Rapid City Police Department, the Pennington County Sheriff's Office, South Dakota Division of Criminal Investigation, and the Oglala Sioux Tribe. And so it was a joint application, and the DCI was awarded, the Division of Criminal Investigation was awarded the grant, and then they passed some money through to each of the respective agencies. So what it means to Pennington County is, an additional investigator for 2 years and funding for that investigator for 2 years to work specifically on methamphetamine cases. Now, methamphetamine has really impacted us on literally every front right now in public safety. And, I think we need to get some balance back into our approach. I've talked about this before. We're not going to wrest our way out of it. We need vigorous enforcement, and this helps with that. But we also need to be looking at more prevention, more treatment, and some of those things are in the pipeline being worked on. But this is a critical piece of it, and it's passed through money to us, and it would be assigned to our drug task force here called Unified Narcotics Enforcement Team, which is the DCI, the Police Department Sheriff's Office. And what's unique about this grant is the Oglala Sioux Tribe is going to add 2 investigators. We have a lot of trafficking back and forth from the reservation and into Rapid City, and back and forth. So having somebody assigned down there and then somebody working in conjunction with the task force up here is a unique opportunity for all of us. So.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Sheriff. Yes, Commissioner DeSanto.
Sheriff Tome, could you expand a little bit on the increase in the volume of methamphetamine that's moving through Rapid City right now? And it seems to me that a lot of it's coming out of Nebraska and Denver and that kind of stuff. But we used to be seeing ounces, and now we're seeing pounds. And help us understand what kind of volume we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's a reflection of our porous border to the south. I mean, most of the methamphetamine comes from Mexico. I would say 95% plus. We've done a lot of things in South Dakota in terms of cracking down on precursor chemicals to make methamphetamine locally. So it's almost all imported now. And it has literally, flooded the market where it was routine to seize ounces of methamphetamine at one time. Now it's very common to seize multiple pounds of methamphetamine. So there is a lot more methamphetamine available, which also, talk about supply and demand, makes it cheaper too. So it's more readily available, it's cheaper than it used to be, and it's highly addictive.
And what's happening also, it's from conversations I've had, is that people that were previously addicted or becoming addicted to prescription drugs, once they are no longer able to get their prescription drugs, they're turning to methamphetamine to meet that fix.
You see some of that, people that are using one drug and it's not available anymore, so they'll look for an alternative drug in terms of, I guess, a choice. The challenge with methamphetamine is the treatment regimen is very long compared to, other drugs, and you don't have the medicine-assisted recovery either. Like with opioids and stuff, you have Suboxone and other drugs can help with withdrawal and get people off of, heroin or opioids. You don't have that with methamphetamine. So it's long-term residential treatment and then long-term outpatient treatment after that to really have an impact. Just as an example, we did a count here. We do this periodically, but about a month ago, how many people were sitting in the Pennington County Jail for possession of a controlled substance? And 95 or 98% of that is probably 95% of it's methamphetamine. We had 289 people sitting there for possession of a controlled substance, and that's over half of our county population, because I don't count the federal inmates in that number. So it gives you an idea as to the impact, in our society and on the jail.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner
Chairman.
LaCroy. 1 second, Deb, and I'll call you. Commissioner LaCroy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kevin, I think you nailed it when you said we can't arrest ourselves out of this problem. Arresting is not going to solve our problem, and I think the meth epidemic is just that. I mean, I've heard people talk about how addictive it is, and people that are addicted to it telling you don't understand the demons that I'm working with, and I think I've heard the comparison of meth to many other addictions, but it takes a strong hold on people, and for a long time it's been talked about that we need the long-term treatment for this, because we aren't going to arrest our way out of this. And I hope this officer, and follow up with a question for the sheriff, he's going to do an evaluation of what's happening in our region and bring back a report, or what can we expect from this position?
Mr. Vice Chair, if I may.
Go ahead, Sheriff.
Yeah, it'll be, again, embedded in the local drug task force that'll work alongside all the other investigators. There are reporting requirements per the COPS grant in terms of the activity, the arrests, drug seize, those sorts of things. So that's all required as part of the grant.
And that'll give us a little better insight of what's happening.
Yes, it will.
Okay.
Commissioner Adcock.
I agree with Commissioner DeSanto, Commissioner DeCroy. The bottom line is there's going to need to be long-term treatment and prevention, because we know we have an epidemic. But we do have, and I think the mental health grant and some of the grants that we have already will be carryovers to some of the stuff that's happening with meth, guys. So in the future, our Sheriff Tome, do we have any grants set up for the long-term treatment of meth, or how is the state handling the prevention and treatment for the future and the cash flow that's going to be needed for this epidemic?
Go ahead.
Vice Chairman, the Governor Nome in her budget address talked specifically about the methamphetamine issue, and I don't remember the dollar amounts. I have them written down in my office, but there's money in there for prevention, which again, I think we've lost our way in prevention the last 8-10 years. And there was a little over $4 million for treatment, and I assume that was new dollars. And because once the state's budget's approved, we'll figure out how that flows to the different treatment centers, throughout the state. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I appreciate that, Kevin Tone, that we're looking forward, because just seeing the impacts of what people are going through and what they're going to need for the future, I believe people, if most of us have seen it, the amount that it's going to cost to try to clean up this epidemic in a sense, and I don't mean clean up in a mean way, I mean in a good way, to help people with treatment and prevention, is going to cost us millions. And it affects the mental health part, it affects the jails, it affects our prisons, it affects everything for the future of the cost of the constituents in Pennington County. So I think we got to get ahead of the game and not behind it. In any way we can help Kevin and Barry and the rest of our team as commissioners to get those grants and move this forward is better served now than later, when the problem is even worse than it is today.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Adcock. Commissioner Roskinick.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to add one additional law enforcement in order to facilitate the grant monies.
I've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
And a second from DeSanto. Further discussion? Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye. Motion carried. Item D, Sheriff Tome.
I'm going to let the auditor speak to it.
Oh, okay, Cindy?
Now that you've approved his FTE, they do need the spending authority from the grant revenue. So we're asking to schedule a hearing at 9:15 on Tuesday, February 19th, to supplement the general fund law enforcement budget in the amount of $78,329 from grant revenue.
So moved.
Got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Further discussion? Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Items from emergency management. Dustin. Good morning.
Good morning, Vice Chair. Commission, Dustin Willett, Director of Emergency Management for Rapid City, Pennington County, coming before you this morning with an informational item on the Pennington County Pre-Disaster Mitigation Plan. This is a FEMA-mandated plan that's revisited every 5 years. The plan is valid or current for 5 years. Every 5 years, it needs to be basically redone, re-updated, or updated. Among many other things that this plan does, it's also a key to FEMA mitigation grant funding. Before you this morning, because our plan expired last year, and I have been diligently working on getting it current. However, there were 2 grant applications this previous grant round, one from the Community Keystone, one from the City of Rapid City, and those grant funding requests weren't able to be moved forward because the plan was not current. So just updating you on that. It's the top of the list right now. I don't often have to come before this board cap in hand and apologize for missing a deadline, but that's what this is, and I'm happy to stand for any questions to clarify where we're at with that.
Questions of Mr. Willett?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Troy.
So how did this come about, Dustin? I mean, I think I've read through your report, and you said you tried to do this 5-year plan yourself, but you usually contract it out. What was the cost savings of trying to do it that route?
So when I came into this position, the contract that had been signed to complete this plan was $40,000. and it was an out-of-state contractor. So the value of doing this in-house is incredible. What's been learned and the relationships that have been built and what's in the plan and the usefulness of the plan far exceed our past efforts at the plan. The problem was I underestimated the time and effort that it would take for an on-time completion. I own that. I underestimated the amount of work that would go into it, and I won't be up here explaining the same thing again.
Okay. Follow up?
Yes.
You know, when I first read that, I've talked to another person who does a lot of work like this, not so much emergency management, but the person took on such a heavy load with this that it took up most of her time to do it. And now they're contracting it out so they could free up that time for that person could do their job. Did you underestimate the amount of time and maybe sometimes when you contract these out, these companies have multiple people to do the different types of things that need to be done, and you're in a department of two.
Yep. So hindsight's always 20/20. I will say now that going through this process and being at the end, it will be approved, and it will be approved very soon. But going through this process, and I've already visited, this is a multi-jurisdictional plan, so it requires involvement from all the participating municipalities, input from all the participating municipalities, integration with all the comprehensive planning and transportation plans and everything else that's out there. It's a comprehensive plan in and of itself, just focused on pre-disaster mitigation efforts. In my discussions with the other stakeholders moving forward, it's one of those things where to make this truly valuable and not just a check mark for a grant application, but to truly make this the plan that it's supposed to be. Right now, every stakeholder that I visited with has committed to engaging in a biannual process so that, you know, in 4 years this doesn't come up again. It's something that we're going to just be continually working on. It's just going to be part of our normal operations. Part of my job normally is going to be searching for the right word, but I hate to use the cliche of a living document, but basically continuing and keeping this fresh and working on it so that it's not something we just visit every 5 years. It's a continuum. And once this is approved, there's so much of it that doesn't need to be redone. It just needs to be kept fresh.
Okay.
So hindsight being 20/20, sure, it would have been great to have somebody else helping. But again, there's a tremendous amount of value in going through that process in-house versus handing off that process to somebody else. So obviously, I truly wish that I wasn't up here having to explain why I missed a deadline, and I truly wish that those grant applications weren't delayed by a year. And that was a mistake that I own and will correct and am correcting. But I think moving forward, we're in a better position with a better plan and better relationships by keeping it in-house. So I think we'll end up, I know we'll end up in a better place. I just wish we didn't have to take a step backwards to take 2 steps forwards.
One last follow-up.
Yes.
I think you kind of answered everything that I was going to ask, but I think the public would like to know how we going to, in a short term, how you going to prevent this from happening again. I think you explained a bunch of that, but could you shorten it up just a little bit?
The first and foremost is I know what it takes now. I know what's involved in the plan. I know what the steps are. I know what the process is, and I know the information that's required to be included in that plan. And so knowing that, moving forward, we'll schedule appropriately. And then again, not letting it sit on a shelf for 4 years and then blowing the dust off and trying to redo it all, but keeping it current as we move along through the years is going to be, in my opinion, very successful in not having me stand here in 5 years and have to give you the same message.
Further questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Chairman?
1 second, Deb.
I think that what Dustin's pointing out is that the fact that they were doing this in-house gave them a better understanding of how to keep up with this program throughout the future, keeping, like he said, keeping it fresh. If we'd have contracted it out 4 years, 5 years from now when we had to do it again, he still wouldn't have had an understanding of the process. and we would have had to possibly contract it out again. You go through growing pains. This is a growing pain, and I think it was probably a good idea to do it in-house.
Thank you, Commissioner DeSanto. Commissioner Hadcock.
So Dustin, moving forward, when do we have to have this next one done by in order to comply?
So the plan that we have currently is expired. I have submitted already the draft new plan, and I'm working with the State of South Dakota Mitigation Officer and their review team to address about 4 or 5 different there's a review tool with multiple sections in it, and they've highlighted the areas that need to be tweaked and updated with some different and additional data. So I'm working with the state mitigation officer and the review team out of that office in Pierre to address those deficiencies in the plan that was submitted in December. And the deadline that I'm working on right now in terms of having all those deficiencies addressed and resubmitted to the state is February 18th.
February 18th?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
So do you believe by February 18th we should be compliant? And are you getting help with this besides yourself to get this done, Dustin?
So at this point, again, the amount of work that needs to be done is tweaking in details, and then having some different input from our stakeholders. So I was in Wall yesterday morning. I'll be visiting with Box Elder this afternoon. I've got all of our stakeholders lined up in meetings over the next week and a half, where I'll be getting some additional information, some different input that's required on some of those pieces. As far as it being compliant by February 18th, no, because it needs to go to the state needs to review it, the state needs to find it in compliance, the state needs to send it to FEMA needs to find it in compliance. FEMA will send us a letter saying that yes, your plan meets all the Code of Federal Regulation requirements that need to be in the plan, and then in the back of that plan is a resolution that each elected body from participating organizations, including the Pennington County Commission, will have to adopt in order to officially adopt the plan, and at that point we are in compliance and current.
Thank you, Dustin. You've always done good work for us, Dustin. I believe what you're saying is true, and you taking the blame, kind of in a sense, for this shows your leadership through telling us the facts and the truth, and that goes a long way with me, anyway, personally. So I believe you've done a good job for us, Dustin, and things happen. And I believe, too, that, again, you thought you could do the work and get it done, which I can trust from myself has happened to me. So you do a good job, and I hope this works out for us and works for Keystone and stuff to be in compliant for the future. Thank you, Dustin.
Thank you, Commissioner Hadcock. Commissioner Ross Connect.
Morning, Dustin. Question one. I know grants can really be tough. So there are outside sources if you get in the bind, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And then it goes to the state, and then from the state it goes to FEMA. Now, FEMA has a couple issues. Can you work that out with FEMA, or does it have to go back to the state and then the state back to you?
Fair question. And what I can offer is historically, both with our plan and with the 66 other plans in counties in South Dakota, the state is a very meticulous, detailed gatekeeper. The state, as far as I know, has not forwarded on a plan that has then been turned back by FEMA. So the state is very meticulous in making sure that all those check boxes are included in that plan before they send it on. If there is a deficiency, FEMA would send that back to the state, and the state would send it to me to correct, and then it would go back. But this is truly FTP file sharing and emails. It's not weeks between email. You know, as soon as that deficiency is noted, I get an email and I start working on it and correcting it. So
So would working on grants like this be helpful in writing future grants? I mean, are they totally different formats?
So this is a plan, not a grant in and of itself. It's just to apply for mitigation grants, you have to have a current plan. So that this is, in and itself, isn't a grant, it's a plan for jurisdictions on identifying threats and hazards in your community and what mitigation actions can be taken to lessen the impact of those disasters in your community. So the latest data from FEMA is showing that it's a 6-to-1 cost-benefit ratio. So every $1 invested in mitigation saves $6 in response and recovery. So obviously FEMA gets hit pretty hard from various parts of the nation with large-scale disasters throughout a given year. And that's where some of these numbers are coming from. If they spend $1 on the front end, it saves them $6 on the back end. So there's a renewed passion, a renewed interest, and quite frankly, an increase in funding for mitigation grants. So this is a program that is strong, it's moving forward, it's being better and better funded every year. So it's an important, very important thing, very important process. Help is always good. Engagement with all of our stakeholders is very good. Commissioner Drews, I have a meeting with Black Hills Council of Government tomorrow. Again, the right people are at the table. The only negative part of this whole thing is I didn't get the plan done in time, and I really wish that wasn't the case. But everything else about this is a fantastic program and it's a good plan.
Commissioner LaCroix.
I'd make a motion to acknowledge this report and ask him to come back on March 5th meeting with a follow-up report.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion. Question of Dustin. Dustin, is the 5th work for you for March?
5th or 19th, I would.
Pardon me, give me one moment to pull up my schedule. Yes, March 5th is fine.
March 5th will work. Okay. Got a motion and a second. Further discussion? Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you for coming in, Dustin. Appreciate it. Next item we have is the abatement request from Tally Construction. Please come forward and identify yourself.
Good morning. John Tally, Tally Construction. And we have a temporary building, or had a temporary building located at Pearly Pit Quarry, and it was there for about 8 years. And then we started to get, we got a tax notice on it for 2017, but the building was moved 2 years ago, and we were trying to get the taxes abated on this because the building is no longer on the property. We've tried for the last 2 years to get this done, haven't had much success. Plus, the building was given a tax parcel ID, so my name is on the property description, so I receive all the notices to spray the weeds, the notices for ongoing problems with the property, certified letters, and I'd like to get all that removed, because if the county goes out and sprays the weeds and sends me the bill, well, then we're gonna have a new problem. And I have to call Mr. Guffey every summer and say, you know, I don't own this property, send this to Kroll Incorporated instead of me. So that's what we're here for today. I have since gotten a memo from Mr. Rittenbauer that says that the taxes will be abated on this property. I will not owe for 2018. And hopefully you can get my name off the property so I don't receive any more notices, because I have no interest in this property.
Okay. Shannon.
Good morning. Shannon Rittberger, Director of Equalization. As Mr. Talley said, I've provided you with a memo or recommendation to grant the abatement. With regard to the notices he might receive, that's something new to me. We discussed this earlier, but the 2019 assessment doesn't have this tax parcel, so I think that's done. The issue here is an abatement on the 2018 assessment, but I think his problem with those letters is done for the future.
Okay. Questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Shannon, second or third paragraph of your letter, you talk about that Mr. Talley argues that the building is a temporary structure and should not be assessed for property taxes. And I'm not disagreeing with the abatement. I think that that's proper, since it wasn't there any longer. But for my knowledge, can a temporary structure be taxed?
Well, the issue is what do you define as a temporary structure?
Okay.
This was temporary. It was only there 8 years. I say it was real property and should be on the property tax roll. Mr. Talley disagrees, and that's why he initially came here in front of the commissioner. I don't want to argue that. The fact is, building's gone.
Gotcha. Okay. What defines temporary?
There's no definition of temporary, but there is a definition of real property for property tax purposes in statute, and it defines what land and buildings are that are considered real property. And a building is a structure that's attached to the land with the intention that it stay there for its useful life. That's a brief summary of that statute.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Shannon. Move for approval of the abatement.
Oh, I just had a couple questions, Shannon. What was the square footage on that building?
Excuse me while I look.
Or do you know how that building was affixed to that site?
The
Is there a concrete foundation?
It's 192 square feet. The dimensions are 16 by 12. And no, I don't know how it was affixed to the site. My guess is that it was not on concrete.
Okay, just wanted some clarification on that.
Building set on metal skids is how it's set.
Oh, it was movable.
Yeah, it's been moved several times, so.
So, Mr. Talley, do I understand with a motion to abate your 2018 taxes, is that satisfactory to you? Is that what you're looking for?
That's what I'm looking for in my name, as Mr. Rittenbauer's explained. The tax parcel will be taken off, so that should stop the letters. But at least we have it in the minutes, so if I have to come back and ask you again next year,
okay,
we'll know what we're talking about.
Good on
Mr.
that,
Chair.
Shannon?
Yes.
That is my motion.
I have a motion from Commissioner DeSanto.
Second.
And a second. Further discussion.
Did
Commissioner LaCroix.
Did Janet have anything to share on notices?
Janet?
No.
I think Janet
okay.
has a comment
Okay.
on the next one, but not on this one.
Okay.
Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye, motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Talley.
Thank you for your time.
Shannon?
The next item on your agenda is 5 abatement applications. I want to point out that the first one comes from the property owner, and I have another memo to you. The other 4 come from my office, that my office brings you those abatement requests. I do want to add something to the abatement number 1, that City of Rapid City, Schlinkert. City of Rapid City doesn't mean anything. That means the city acted on it. Schlinkert is the property owner in this case. And I've given you a memo, but I did not make it clear in that memo that the abatement application is for a partial abatement of the taxes. This is a request to abate the taxes due to missing the deadline of the elderly and disabled assessment freeze. The property owner would otherwise qualify but missed the deadline. So we recalculate the assessment based on what that frozen assessment would have been if he would have received it, but there still will be a tax bill remaining. This is, if granted, would only abate part of the taxes. Now, you see in my memo that I make a recommendation that you deny it. just on the reason that the property owner missed the deadline. The law does allow, it specifically says that if a property owner would otherwise have qualified but missed the deadline, he may petition the commissioners for an abatement of the taxes. Just for the sake of the deadline and holding to that is my recommendation to deny.
Questions?
Is the applicant here?
Is the applicant in the audience? Apparently not. Any questions of Shannon?
I'll make a motion to deny.
Got a motion. Is there a second? Got a motion. Is there a second? To deny.
I'll second for discussion.
Got a motion and a second to deny. Commissioner Hadcock.
That was just for discussion.
Okay.
If anybody has anything to discuss on it.
Commissioner LaCroix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I struggle with this because I think, you know, in the past, we've set the rules, that timelines need to be followed, you know, and so that's where I struggle. Not only that, and being a veteran, I understand. That's why I asked if the applicant was here today to be able to present his case of what happened, so I could hear that and make a decision on that. Without the applicant here, I'm kind of leaning towards what the motion is on the floor because I don't have more information to be able to make a good decision. I support Shannon and those deadlines because without those, then we're going to end up having multiple people coming forward that miss those deadlines. That's
Chairman,
Commissioner Hadcock.
I'd ask for a continuance to see if the applicant could give us more information and be here at the next meeting.
Are you offering a substitute motion?
Yes, sir.
Have a substitute motion to delay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion? Call the roll on the substitute motion.
DeSanto,
No.
Hadcock,
This is for substitute?
yes.
Yes.
Aye.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye. Motion carried 4-1. Next item, Shannon.
Okay, I'll just introduce the next 4 abatement requests. They are brought to you by my office when we notice or when a problem is brought to our attention. And you can see on the abatement request the reasons for them. These are typical. We had some owner-occupied applications where the property owner did nothing wrong. There was a fault in the processes in our office, and I've noted those. The last one was the city of Wall actually purchased some property, and it is exempt because it's the city. So I recommend that you grant the abatement requests here that my office brings to you on all 4 of them.
I'd make that motion.
Second?
Got a motion to approve the items 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Second?
And a second from Commissioner DeSanto. Further discussion? Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Items from the Highway Department. Morning, Joe.
Morning, Commission. Joe Miller, Highway Department. Item A on the agenda list there, just simply an update on Sharon Lake Road at the request of the Commission. As the project started back in 2008, so it's been going on almost 11 years now. We are at the 95% engineering plans currently, and we are under right-of-way negotiations. We have currently 26 parcels remaining on that right-of-way negotiation, and that's 18 owners. The Forest Service easement documents have been sent to Pier or to the DOT in Pierre. And they had then forwarded them to the Federal Highway Administration for a 150-foot wide easement through the Forest Service. So that ball is rolling. The structure at the Horse Creek crossing there, we're going to get or soon receive cost comparisons from Ferber on 2 different structures. One being a 22-foot by 9-foot arch bridge, the other being a double 11-foot by 9-foot concrete box culvert. We'd like to advertise and let the project in July of 2019. The reason for that, we have a categorical exclusion that expires August 9th, and the project has to be let by that date. Otherwise, that categorical exclusion will have to undergo a review process at that point, and could then further delay the project. We're hopeful for construction in 2020.
Questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner DeSanto.
Joe, I'd just like to appreciate you updating us and kind of get a copy of your notes so that I don't have to write it all down. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions?
All right, on to item B.
Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner
Sorry.
Hadcock.
Superintendent Joe, on the categoric, whatever you said.
I can't say it either.
Tell me what that means. Is it, and if we didn't get it done, how much more money would it cost us?
Commissioner Hadcock, I
what's
don't have that answer, but if you don't mind, let me call on Mark and see if he knows the answer.
Okay. Basically, what is that, Mark? What does that mean, and to the project, and what's the meaning of the categoric thing you just said?
Mark Schock, Pennington County Highway. Ms. Hadcock, the categoric exclusion is it's not a full-blown EA or EIS, which are environmental studies, impact studies.
Yep.
So this project was reviewed, and they found no significant impact. So it was giving what they call a categoric exclusion from any further environmental studies. And as Joe said, it lasts it's a 3-year period, and that will expire August 9th. We found whether we can meet that date with letting is going to be very tight. More than likely, we may not meet that date, but we're still hoping for a fall of 19 bid letting. If the categoric exclusion expires, that means that the environmental issues just have to go before the federal agencies again, just for review and make sure there hasn't been any changes since the last categoric exclusion was put in place.
Mr. Chair.
Isn't that what was that on Rochford that we're having the same issue? Or was this the same issue that we're having with Sheridan Lake? Or could have, as we had with Rochford?
That is correct, Ms. Hadcock. It's the same issue we ran into in December on Rochford Road with the environmental or the right-of-way negotiations needing to start. They gave us a 1-year extension on that, and then the categoric exclusion on the bridge in Rochford.
Okay, and I guess we would have an update on that when you do the Rochford one of what's happening on that, and then again, the cost is the categoric exclusion cost us, or does it cost the feds, or who has to pay for that if we miss that deadline?
There would be no additional costs for Pennington County unless there are new environmental issues that were found. That could cause some extra cost to the project depending what those issues might be, and that's unknown at this time.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner DeSanto.
If we miss that deadline, it creates delays, without a doubt, right?
That is correct.
And delays cost money. I mean, almost always.
Well, that's
So-
true, yes.
So therein lies the problem, Deb, is that if it's delayed again, not only does it give them the opportunity or the environmental side of things, the opportunity to decide, well, we don't like this, so we want to come back and do another environmental impact study. Then we delay, then bid costs go up and all of that stuff. So that's my opinion, is we don't want to delay any further.
Right. And mine wasn't about the delay, just so people knew what a categoric exclusion meant and what that could do to affect us. But thank you, Commissioner DeSanto, for that update.
Thank you. Further questions? Yes, Commissioner Roskinek.
Mark and Joe, if they have to do these environmental studies, obviously somebody's getting paid to do that, so whoever that is, they're certainly doing quite well. How long do those studies take? If they have to do another, if we don't meet the August 9th deadline and they have to do another study, how long do those studies take? Because like Mark said, time is money, and we'd certainly like to meet that deadline if we could.
Not necessarily, they wouldn't have to go through the entire study again. It would just, at that point, be a review process to make sure everything still lines up with their original assessment. At this point, I don't know whether that's a 60-day or a 90-day review process. We'll get to the Rochford Road, but on the Rochford Road, it's a 90-day review process.
So if we don't meet the August 9th, what would be another date that, how far out could this possibly be extended?
It could be up to 90 days, I would say, if that review process is the same as Rochford Road. Again, we don't know that at this point, what that review process would entail.
I would just ask that you keep the commissioners apprised. If we're not gonna meet that date, I'd like to know sooner than later.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Further questions?
Thank you, Mark. On to item B, South Rochford project update. We're in the planning stages. We actually received the preliminary plans late Friday. So we've got those. We plan to review those with our engineer in-house and go over those, make sure they meet what our expectations were on that. The right-of-way with the Forest Service is going to be secured in the same manner as Sheridan Lake Road. We spent some time looking for a memorandum of understanding that ended up not facilitating into anything. We've then found our Schedule A, which is an agreement that we have with the Forest Service that spells out right-of-way acquisitions in that. So we're proceeding with that for the right-of-way through the Forest Service. We're hopeful that the right-of-way negotiations on Rochford will be started here in the very near future. The structure at the north end of the Rochford Road, the bridge, which that's been separated from the actual Rochford Road project and has had some issues with the categoric exclusion. We have an agreement at our office for the design work. We'll be bringing that forward at the next meeting. After we have some time to review the plans, the KLJ will then get started on the design work for that. As far as the the environmental review, the EA on Rochford Road, as soon as we review the preliminary plans, we'll be able to get those preliminary plans to the state, and then they will then begin the 90-day EA review.
Questions?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner LaCroix.
From that report, so you're looking at, we get that 90-day review, we could get the bridge going by the summer, maybe?
Possibly.
Okay. That was my only question. Thanks. Thanks, Joe.
Any further questions relative to the Rochford Road? Commissioner Roskinek.
Joe, just keep us, there again, can you just keep us surprised on how that's going, and if there's anything that we can do on our end, we'd certainly like to participate as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Item C, agreement between the City of Rapid City and Pennington County for the traffic signal at Sheridan Lake Road and Dunsmore Road. Joe.
Okay. This is actually the final agreement between the city of Rapid City and Dunsmore. This light was constructed back in 2016 at the request of the city and the city residents and the county residents. The agreement spells out basically that the county would pay for the engineering and design and the construction of the traffic signal. That's already been done, the traffic signal's up. This is just the final agreement between the city and the county as far as who will maintain it, repairs and so forth. One thing to point out in the agreement, the timing, the city won't change the timing without notifying the highway department, just so we're both apprised of that information and agree upon the timing of that light.
Thank you. Questions?
Move for approval.
Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye, motion carried. Item D, authorization to advertise and let bids for the new trucks, authorization to purchase one new road grader. Joe?
All right. I just want to say for the commission's information that Dan Larson, our shop mechanic, and Jerry from Butler Cat and Wade from RDO are both all three in the audience. So any specialized questions that I can't answer, they are there for your information and use. Basically, before you, I've put together a 10-year plan after coming to the highway department in December. We have a plan for replacing our roads, how often we gravel, how often we crack seal, so on and so forth. We didn't have a plan for equipment replacement. Some of these items, such as the motor graders, are upwards of $330,000 for just a motor grader. So Dan, Mark, and myself sat down and spent several days putting together a plan as far as what we need to replace and how often we need to replace it. I'll go over the motor graders here first. We put about 800 hours a year on those motor graders. There's three options there on the replacement plan. The biggest thing to look at there is there's two different options for motor grader replacement. One is a 7-year plan and one is a 10-year plan. The 7-year plan keeps those motor graders under warranty for the entire time that the county has them, which then in turn, after we get through the one full cycle, the equity in those motor graders will go up to about $40,000. The information that we have currently from past trade-ins and the motor graders that came before you last year is the motor graders, once they get out to that 8, 9, 10-year mark, they drastically drop in value. Some of the ones that we're looking at trading in this year are worth about $85,000 to $86,000 on trade-in. Again, that number's not final, but that's an approximation on that. Whereas if we keep them for that 7 years and trade them in at the end of that 7 years, they'll be worth about $130,000 approximately. Now that market is always changing. From what I understand from the dealers, that right now we have a glut of used motor graders on the market, so that value's really decreased. In the future, it could increase, as the used motor graders kind of get bought up. Touching on the 7-year warranty, with the motor graders that we have 8 right now that are out of warranty, but while those motor graders were in warranty, they did warranty repairs, $363,000 worth of warranty repairs. One of those was just here in the last, I believe it was 2 years ago. It happened a month before one of our motor graders came out of warranty, and that was at $125,000. I do want to note that our shop does have the ability to make the majority, probably repair almost anything. But that entails time and also the availability of an extra motor grader, because these are emergency vehicles. Therefore, if a motor grader does go down, we can't have it be down for 2-3 months. And sometimes those repairs can take, months if we don't have the manpower and time for that. I'll touch on the extended warranty that we've gotten on our previous motor graders. It cost us about $1,700 per motor grader for a 2-year extended warranty to keep that 7-year warranty mark. The next thing I'll touch on is the out of warranty cost of the 8 machines that we've got currently. We have 6 2011 motor graders. Those went out of warranty in December of 2017. And then we have 2 2009s that went out of warranty in August of 2016. The cost for those machines is about $93,000 a year. That's all 8 machines. So the wearable part maintenance is about $70,000. It would have cost us that no matter what. So the in-house repairs that would have been under warranty at our cost, at the county's cost, was about $24,000. So that, had those machines been kept under warranty, we would have not had to spend that $24,000. At this point, I'll open it up to you guys for any questions.
Questions, yes. Commissioner DeSanto.
Just to clarify, Joe, we cannot purchase extended warranties beyond 7 years. Is that correct?
With one of the dealers, that is correct. The other dealer stated that we could purchase, kind of an a la carte type warranty, but we're going to pay for it. It's essentially an insurance policy, and who's going to take that risk? He did not. We don't have the information on what that costs at this time.
Okay, thank you. And how far out can we do that?
As far as
could we take it to 10 years?
His indication is yes, we can.
Thank you.
Commissioner LaCroix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you, Joe, for coming up with a replacement plan. I think that was very important, and you identified some of the problems that we're having and what we need to do to keep things moving and going forward. And it's not limited to one thing. I'd just like to remind the commission that, this is what we're voting on, is the plan. The bid process for different products and all that stuff is going to come later. This is on the plan, and I think it's a very good prospect, and I know Joe's taken some, and Mark have taken some insight with the employees to come up with this plan, and it's something that we need to do. So with that, that's where I'm at with this motion, or what's presented in front of us is this is the plan, and that's what we should kind of stick with. All the other stuff, I think, will be coming at a later date.
Commissioner Roskinek.
Joe, we talked in person, Joe and I did, and I like the idea that we can sit there with these options and we can look out 10 years. So we kind of know what we're getting into, whether we go, with an option or we don't go with an option, or if we go with these options, we got 1, 2, and 3, and I guess that's where my understanding that if we go with one, we're pretty much staying within warranties, and 1 would be the least risky. And then 2 and 3, we're kind of stretching our neck out, kind of hanging our hat on a prayer that the machines can hang in there. So option 1, so everybody's on the same page, would be probably the least risky.
That is correct.
And I look at a road grader doing 2 things. Number 1, doing road maintenance, but most importantly, they're a safety device, and we don't realize how important they are until we have a winter storm, and we need them things running.
Absolutely. And just to follow up on that, wow, that train left the station. I apologize.
I give you a second to think about it. Joe, I appreciate the fact that you've put together the schedule, that you and Mark have worked on that. I think it's something that's very much needed. I personally favor, keeping equipment under warranty if at all possible. I know you got a great crew out there that can do a lot of fixing, but at the same time, they probably have enough to do without having to fix old equipment just to keep it operating. So I appreciate what you're doing here.
Absolutely. So follow up on that, when we get to the end of this 7-year cycle with the motor graders, we'll have one motor grader upwards of that almost 10,000 hours. Hours in use will go fluctuate for the year, but on that average of 800 hours, we'll have about 9,500 hours on the last one that we do trade in.
Okay.
Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Hadcock.
isn't it not, is this to vote on the plan or to authorize to advertise and let bids for new trucks?
I was going to say that as well. This is actually authorization. The plan is just so you guys know what's coming in the future. We'll come back to you, probably show you this same spreadsheet each year. That way you know what our plan is and where we're going.
Okay,
So
thank
my
you.
motion would be to approve.
I've got a motion to approve the authorization to advertise and let bids for new trucks, authorization to purchase one new motor grader.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
you didn't ask about, well, we're going with further discussion, so go ahead.
Further discussion?
Okay. Anybody from the audience?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Dan Richer. I'm glad to see they're finally getting their act together and trying to control the fleet. What I'm a little concerned with is 7 vehicles in 1 year. That was in the package that I looked at on my computer was 7 trucks in 1 year. That's a lot of expense.
Yeah, that's not what the motion is on the floor, though.
5 trucks.
The motion on the floor is for 5 trucks and 1 motor grader.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Still 5 trucks.
Mr.
That's
Chair.
still a lot.
Commissioner DeSanto.
Dan, I spent some time out speaking with Joe and Mark, and the reason that we need to do this is because those trucks are becoming a liability because they had a manufacturing, I'd say it's a manufacturing defect, but because they're so old, there's nothing we can do about it, where rust has gotten in between 2 frame layers and is forcing those frame layers apart, compromising the weight, or compromising the integrity of the frame.
So they're Ford trucks.
Pardon me?
They're Ford trucks.
I don't know. I'll keep my mouth shut about that.
They're notorious for doing that, yeah.
Anyway, that's the reason why we have to address these ones now. And by going through this plan to replace our equipment on a 10-year or 7-year, I'm leaning towards 10, these guys sound like they're leaning towards 7, year basis is once we get rid of these vehicles that are already a liability, then we won't have to do this in the future. We're trying to address it in advance.
Well, the only thing I'm concerned with is that big lump sum of vehicles. That's a lot of money. That's a slug of cash.
A lot of money.
So, but I do, I mean, it's long overdue that they finally come up with a maintenance plan on. But the only thing I'd like to see on these is a cost-benefit analysis.
They've done that.
So Dan, correct?
Yep.
I did do some projections, and you'll see in the commission's packet, if you look out, if we keep those motor graders at 7 years.
Oh, I'm not worried about the motor graders.
Well, I'm saying the motor graders and the trucks, if you go out 10 years to that 7th year and we start getting more for our trade-ins, that our eventual budget actually goes down.
Oh, I understand that. So I'm just talking about that big lump sum right off the top.
Absolutely.
One of the problems is delaying things too long, and then you do end up with that.
Correct.
A whole bunch of them at one time.
And I'm glad they've put something together on that.
Yeah.
But
Do I have somebody else down here? that
Mr.
wants-
Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner LaCroy.
so the motion on the floor is to let out the 5 new trucks, right? And 1 motor grader?
Correct.
The plan that you presented with 3 different options, is that something we should bring forward at a different meeting?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so I'm okay with the motion on the floor, but I guess I'd like to have that plan brought forward so the commission could make a decision on that. And so you have something to work with and your crew does.
Okay.
Very well, understood. Further discussion? Discussion from the commission?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
One
Commissioner
last question.
DeSanto.
Joe, the motor grader we are going to replace, or going to vote on replacing right now. How many hours are on that motor grader?
Currently, that has about 6,000 hours. It's probably a little bit more than that. I think these were at their last service, so it's probably, that 6,500 hour mark.
And is it in warranty still or out of warranty?
It is not in warranty. It's 10 years old. It's 2009.
Okay, further questions?
I might.
Commissioner Ross?
One thing we didn't mention, Joe, there might be some salvage value in the equipment that we get rid of, so probably not much, but there is a bright side to this.
Correct. And the trucks, we probably will put those on an auction. People will buy those, whether it be for the whole truck to use on a farm or the cabs and motors and transmissions are still excellent in them.
Okay, thank you, Joe. We have a motion on second on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye, motion carried. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Commission.
Items from Human Resources.
Morning, Commissioners. John Morrow with the HR Department. We've got two things on the agenda for today from the HR Department. The first one is actually through our Compensation Committee. We're requesting a review and really approval for the updated bylaws. The committee has been operating under the bylaws that were last created and approved in 2012. So the members of the committee voted recently to update the bylaws. We formed a subcommittee that actually reviewed the bylaws document and then worked with our departments as well to create a new draft. That draft is actually attached for your review as well. The updated bylaws that we're proposing actually broadens the department representation. In the past, we had limited somewhat, if you will, the representation on the committee to two elected officials, two department heads that were appointed. What we're asking with the updated bylaws is to actually expand that so that we have 5 of each. We'll have 5 of the elected officials and 5 of the appointed department managers from the largest departments, if you will, from a headcount perspective in the county. The term limits also would be removed from the updated bylaws document, and we believe that by inviting a larger group of elected and appointed officials to participate in that committee, we're going to be able to ensure broader or more complete or collective representation on the committee, and then also as we prepare for the upcoming wage review and wage analysis and structure, that'll also give us additional representation to help guide that process for the upcoming year. So what I'm seeking today would be a motion to accept the updated Compensation Committee bylaws as presented to replace or update the 2012 version. And I'd stand for any questions that you have.
Commissioner,
Questions? Commissioner Ross Connect.
I'll let you go first.
Yes, I attended that committee meeting with John, and so I get a pretty thorough understanding of what the bylaws will do, and it's my understanding that the department heads will have a stronger voice in the different issues. So I'm in favor of it myself.
Commissioner LaCroy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, I've had some second thoughts.
Yes, sir.
You know, I've sat through the commission or the compensation committee meetings, and we had some really good conversations. But after sitting back and thinking a little bit and reviewing the past one again, you know, we had the discussion about employees at large. I agree that the department's heads all need to be there.
Right.
But I think having some employees who are coming, and I don't know how to get there. I'll explain that one
Sure.
at the very beginning. I think having some employees in the county at that meeting is very helpful number one, for me, when I first started in the compensation committee, when I was requested to come on, I heard some stuff that a lot of people didn't forget, or they just brought it up and we had good discussion on it. And it was very important. I thought it helped our committee out to remind us of some of the things. And that's not saying the department heads don't know that either, but and this person was assigned from a department head that, from that department. And so I don't know if the compensation committee if the department head could assign somebody that could fill in their place if they're not there, or maybe we could find some way to get coming up employees involved with this that could help the committee out. I mean, I'd look for Janet's been your past chairman for years, and that's what's going through my mind. I'm almost tempted to I'd like to probably have the compensation committee just review this one more time, to have one more discussion on it if they could. You know, if I'm way out of there, I'll listen to you guys, but I'd probably like just have it revisited one more time to see where you guys are at with that.
You bet. No, I think it's
Chairman?
very good points. Oops, sorry.
Commissioner Adcock.
A motion to continue, please, till the next meeting,
Got a motion.
February 19th.
Is there a second? Motion is to continue until next meeting.
I'll second if I can do it.
I've got a second from Commissioner LaCroix.
I'd just like to make a friendly amendment to have the compensation committee, not just to continue, but to have the compensation committee just revisit it at their next meeting.
Is a friendly amendment okay with the motion, Commissioner Adcock?
Yes, sir. Is the next meeting before the 19th, or do we have to continue after?
We'll check the date.
I'll check the date. It's actually after the next commission meeting, if I remember correctly.
Is that going to create problems with
So we
anything?
need to continue it until the 19th if you're going to continue it.
Well, we'd have to do it after that, it sounds like, till March.
That's what I mean, March 15th.
Okay.
Because I think it's after the March 5th meeting too, is it not, John?
We have a meeting actually later this month, but we had actually pushed it back a little bit, so it aligned. It's 2 days after the commission meeting, I believe.
March 5th.
Go with March 5th?
March 5th would work.
Okay,
Amend your motion, Deb.
so,
That'd be my amendment.
so the amendment
Okay.
and the friendly amendment are accepted under the
Yes.
motion.
There you go.
Further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner
For
DeSanto.
clarification, Lloyd, are you leaning towards, if I'm hearing you correctly, are you leaning towards replacing the department heads with employees, or additional to the department heads? Or if the department head can't make it, an employee replaces them?
Well, here's my thoughts, because that's how we got one of them in there, was if the department head couldn't be there, they assigned somebody in their department to come, which is fine. I just like the committee to revisit that. Maybe they could change that to where that's in the bylaws. Maybe they could look at different ways to get more input from the employees one way or another. You know, at large was kind of like you didn't know what they were talking about. Maybe it's appointed employees. I don't know.
Can I comment on that, Mr. Chairman?
Certainly can.
Janet Saylor, County Treasurer. We do have that in the bylaws, that if the department head does not want to be a part of the committee, that they can appoint someone to come in their place. The only thing we wanted in there, Lloyd, was to make sure that it was the same person every time.
Yeah.
So that there was consistency. But one of the reasons we looked at changing this was because the department head set the budget, and because some of the things we were doing in the past, we would discuss it at that meeting, and it was confidential, and the next thing we knew, it was out there, and the employees were all in an uproar, and nothing had ever been decided, because our group doesn't make the final decision on anything. It has to come back to the commissioners. The commissioners have the final say. And after doing some studies of other counties and other places that had a comp committee, that's how it was set up. It was either department heads or just elected officials, and we thought in all fairness, we needed to have elected officials and appointed department heads.
Okay, thank you, Janet. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Further discussion? Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Rosknecht,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye, motion carried.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Commissioners.
John.
The second item we have today is basically a point of interest. Our updated annual performance reviews for department heads in the county. The policy that we drafted actually was fairly comprehensive. It included a number of corrections or updates to add additional value to that process and to spread them out over the course of the year based upon anniversary dates of the department heads. As we were going through preparing for today's meeting, we recognized that the compensation steps that we have in place don't fit perfectly with the non-county department heads that we have in place. So we have two that are actually employees. One is an employee of the state, Mr. Carley, and then Mr. Willett is actually an employee of the city. Their compensation structures don't align with their anniversary dates, per se, with how our new policy is actually drafted. What I'm proposing is that we be granted a little bit of time and come back at the next meeting so that we can actually talk through what that needs to look like for them. I've already spent some time briefly with both gentlemen to talk about their reporting structure as far as how they are actually in position for us doing their roles for the county. And then trying to understand where their compensation discussions actually occur. Again, they don't align with our current policy, and I'd like to draft an update to this policy to address that. And then also we need to do a little bit more research with regard to our Department of Equalization. Our director in that department also, under state statute, there's a requirement that you meet with them on a very specific time frame every year. That again does not align with the anniversary date or the compensation discussion. So would like to get some more information about our options with regard to that. Do we need to have two separate meetings then in order to meet the statute requirements and the compensation requirements, or can that be combined at some point and meet that requirement as well? So this is basically just an informational step, just to make you aware. Kevin had initially, Mr. Carley had initially been scheduled for today, and once we realized that the compensation piece doesn't align with our current process, we thought it best to try to find something that will work for us and for him and his reporting structure as well.
Certainly. Thank you, John. I don't think a motion is necessary. John will bring the information back to us in the future.
Very good.
Any specific questions to John on what he just talked about? Hearing none, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item we have is Holly.
All right, Commissioners, what you have in front of you today is draft one of the Pennington County Board of Commissioners bylaws and rules of procedure. This is a compilation of guiding statutes set forth in codified law, Robert's Rules of Order that we follow procedure-wise for the Board of Commissioners, as well as other process procedural type items that we have traditionally followed, but now it's condensed into one document. I want to thank Jay and Michelle both have spent tremendous amount of time helping me to get this to the form that you see today. But I'm not asking for the board to approve this today. I would like to place it on the next commission meeting agenda to give you plenty of time to read and review and see if there's anything that this board feels we may have missed that you want to see differently. I'm certainly here to stand for any questions that you may have today if something has jumped out at you, but I would like a motion to continue until the 19th, please.
Questions?
Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Adcock.
motion to continue, sir.
I've got a motion to continue
Second.
and a second. Further discussion. Commissioner LaCroy.
I know we don't like to talk on continuation motions, but I think some great gratitude needs to be given to Holly and the staff for putting this together. This wasn't something that was just put together in 60, 90 days. They've been working on it for over a year, and they've put a lot of sweat and work, and I've seen them times in their offices going over these over and over and over again. So I just want to tell 'em my appreciation of the hard work that you guys put in is not unrecognized. And I think the continuation for us to review it and stuff is good, and I appreciate you asking for the more input if they're needed.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner LaCroy. Yes,
I'd like to
Commissioner.
ditto Lloyd's sentiments as well as thank Holly. If it took them a year to put this thing together, then we need, obviously, time to study it.
Yeah,
and,
I wouldn't
go
quite
over it.
say a year straight,
Wow.
but
In bet-
yeah, I mean, it's a comprehensive document. There's a lot of laws, there's a lot of procedure, things that we just have always done that probably should have been in writing, that at least now future boards have a guiding document.
Appreciate it, Holly. Thank you.
Commissioner Roskinek.
Holly, these are updated, or we have a chance to update these once a year, right? So if we
Correct.
miss something this year, in 2020, we have an opportunity to catch anything that we might have missed this year. So it isn't like this could go out 5 years before we could ever do anything.
Correct. I have a provision in there that the board shall review the bylaws in January of each year at a regularly scheduled commission meeting. But then it also came up here recently that, legislature meets in the beginning of each year and laws take effect in July. So we do have a preface in here that says any laws that may be updated or changed by the legislature would be in effect, even though the bylaws might not necessarily reflect them.
Is there a time frame that this draft needs to be reviewed?
No, like I say, this has been quite some time in the making. No, sir, there is no specific time frame to get it adopted.
Thank you.
Yes.
Jay Alderman with State's Attorney's Office. On that last thought, as far as, I don't want anybody to feel that you'd be tied in. If you adopted it at the next meeting and 2 weeks later it was discovered there was a major flaw, but you have to wait until January. No, I don't want that to be the case. It's, as a term used earlier, a living, breathing document that if something needs to be corrected, we can add that in there, or as necessary deemed by the commission.
idea.
So,
Thank you, Jay.
Okay.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion on the floor?
Yes.
We have a motion to
Continue.
To continue till February
continue
19th.
to a certain
Till
date,
February 19th, right? The next commission meeting?
February 19th. Does that
It's acceptable.
work? Okay.
Did we have a second?
Pardon me?
Do we have a second?
We had a second.
Yeah, Hadcock made the motion, I seconded it.
Oh, you seconded it?
I
I thought
think-
DeSanto did.
Oh, maybe DeSanto did.
Give it
Yeah,
to
he
him.
did.
Okay.
Call the roll.
DeSanto?
Aye.
Hadcock?
Aye.
LaCroy?
Aye.
Roskinick?
Aye.
Drews?
Aye, motion carried. Okay, next item is planning and zoning. DJ.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner DeSanto.
move for a 5-minute break.
Got a motion, second,
Second.
for a 5-minute break. Call the roll.
Oh, DeSanto?
Aye.
Hadcock?
Aye.
LaCroy?
Aye.
Roskinick?
Aye.
Drews?
Aye, motion carried. 5-minute break. Order. Planning and zoning, PJ.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Commissioners. P.J. Conover, Director of Planning Department. Item 23 are items from Planning and Zoning. The first items are on the consent agenda. The Board of Commissioners uses a consent agenda to act on non-controversial and routine planning and zoning items quickly. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and vote of the board. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of a board member or a citizen. The consent agenda for the Planning and Zoning contains the following items. Item A, layout plat 1738 for Dorothy Johnson Estates, Great Western Bank, the personal representative for Dorothy Johnson Estates. It's been recommended to be continued to the February 19, 2019 Board of Commissioners meeting. Item B, first reading of public hearing of rezone 1710 and comprehensive plan amendment 1709
For Dorothy Johnson Estates, Great Western Bank, the personal representative for Dorothy Johnson Estates. It's been recommended to be continued to the February 19th, 2019 Board of Commissioners meeting. Item C, road naming for Shriner Investments. Shane Shriner is the agent to Rockets Court, and approval has been recommended. Item D, road naming for Shriner Investments. Shane Shriner is the agent. Road to Warriors Drive, and approval has been recommended. Item E, road naming Shriner Investments. Shane Shriner is the agent to Jazz Drive, and approval has been recommended. Item F, road naming for Shriner Investments. Shane Shriner is the agent to Bulls Court, and approval has been recommended. Item G, Major Plan Unit Development Amendment 1704 for Kelly Development. Ryan Kelly is the agent. Planning Commission recommends it be continued to the March 5th, 2019 Board of Commissioners meeting. Item H, Subdivision Regulation Variance 1815 for Shriner Investments. Shane Shriner is the agent. Recommended to be continued to the March 5th, 2019 Board of Commissioners meeting. Item I, first reading and public hearing of rezone 1811 and comprehensive plan amendment 1810 for Shriner Investments. Shane Shriner is the agent. It's been recommended to be continued to the March 5th, 2019 Board of Commissioners meeting.
Commissioners, if you notice, of the 9 items, 5 of those are to be continued to future meetings. Is there a motion to accept the consent calendar, or is anybody desire to have any of these items removed from the consent calendar?
Move for approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion? Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye, motion carried.
Thank you.
Next item, J.
Good morning, Brittany Molitor, Environmental Planning Supervisor. Item J is a formal request of the Board of Commissioners to close section lines surrounding the Peatling and Sons mining quarry. A similar request was in front of this board in September of 2018. The reasoning for this request is because of unsafe, and hazardous conditions in and around the mine. Section line highways are typically known for areas where people can, walk and travel along them, the public. And at this time, Peatling would like to close, request formal action on the board to close these section lines so they can post signs that basically say that these areas are unsafe and potentially hazardous. Like I said, they were in front of this board in September, but these are the additional, the section line areas that they would like to request that there's a formal action to close so they can post signs. Currently, there is a large gate that is in front of one of the section lines that accesses Forest Service lands. This was done in conjunction with the Forest Service and Peatling. The Forest Service does not recognize section lines right-of-ways as the county commission or township boards do. So the request from this board is to formally close section lines between sections 13, 18, 19, 24, 25, and 30 of 2 North and Range 7 East in Pennington County. So I'd entertain any questions.
Questions for Brittany? Ross Connect.
Brittany, when you say close, I'm new to this, so on the closure, it's not vacating it, it's just closing it. And then if it is closed, is it on being closed on public property or private property?
It is on the Peatling property. So what they did in the past on those other section line closures, the ones, let's see, they were in this area, like up in here, they did those and they just posted signs. They can put gates across, they just can't lock them. What they did is they posted signs that said there are hazardous and unsafe conditions for the next 5,000 feet or whatever. So they're letting the public know that access to this property is, restricted somewhat. They didn't put no trespassing signs because that was a wish of the board at the previous request, that there wasn't anything posted, just that they were aware that there are conditions that aren't necessarily conducive of public access.
So once the mining activity is complete and reclamation's been done, then do they reopen them?
Yes, I believe the request will be to come in front of the board and open them back up and then remove the signs.
So they're just being closed for the public safety?
Correct.
Further questions of Brittany?
Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Adcock.
motion to approve.
Got a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner LaCroy seconded. Further discussion? Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye, motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay,
Good morning, Cassie Bolstead, Assistant Planning Director. Let me get a presentation up here for you. Item K is a layout plat request. This is plat 1849. This is a request to combine two lots to create Lot A of Layton subdivision. The applicant is Carol Layton. As this property exists today, it is two properties, both zone low-density residential, total 14.19 acres. Access to both of them is off of Schroeder Road, and it currently contains a single-family residence, a barn, a detached garage, a lean-to, and a shop. What they are proposing to do through this request is just combine these two lots. They are just consolidating both of these into Lot A. This was routed through the interdepartmental review process and nothing of significant concern came back. The applicant's request does decrease density by one lot in this area, so for the purposes of a layout plat, staff does not find any issues with this request, and staff and the Planning Commission recommended approval of layout plat 1849 with 6 conditions.
questions of Cassie? Yes, Commissioner Ross
Is
Connect.
there a benefit to combining? I'm not saying I disapprove it or approve it. I just wondered what the benefit is. We're just taking, so we're just going to reduce the one tax ID and just one lot.
In this situation, I can't specifically say what the purpose is in this situation, because I don't know if they've told us that, but generally with these lot consolidations, we see it for taxation purposes, for it to just be one lot, taxed under one parcel ID rather than two separate lots.
Okay.
Yes, you can tell me acreage of these?
Total, they're 14.19 acres. I don't know the acreage of each of them
That's fine.
by themselves.
That's fine. Further questions?
Mr. Chair.
Do I have a motion? Commissioner LaCroy.
Move for approval with,
Got a motion from Commissioner LaCroy. Is there a
Second.
second? And a second from Ross Connect. Further discussion? Call the roll.
DeSanto,
aye.
Hadcock, Hadcock,
Aye. Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye, motion carried. Item L, JP.
Hello again, Commissioners. P.J. Conover, Director, Planning Department. Item L is the first reading and public hearing of rezone 1810 and Comprehensive Plan Amendment 1809. The request is to rezone 10 acres from General Agriculture District to Limited Agriculture District and to amend the Pennington County Comprehensive Plan and future land use from Plan Unit Development Sensitive to Limited Agriculture. The subject property is shown on the screen. On February 17, 2015, the Board of Commissioners approved layout plat 1510 for the subdivision of the subject property. There were some concerns by the landowner and the applicant, and upon an additional submittal of a preliminary plat on September, or in 2018, there were some adjustments to the original layout plat, but nothing to the significance that would require starting this process over. On September 18, 2018, the Board of Commissioners approved preliminary plat 1826 and subdivision regulation variance 1806 with 11 conditions. One of the conditions of the layout of the preliminary plat was for the applicant to either request a lot size variance for the proposed lot or to rezone the subject or the new lot to a zoning district that would match the lot size. With the variance request that was sent in. The Board of Adjustment denied the variance, which is number 1811, to allow a general agricultural lot at a size smaller than 40 acres, which is required. Therefore, the other option for the applicant was to request a rezone, which is what's before you today. The existing property is all currently zoned general agriculture. Future land use is plan unit development sensitive. We're looking at 69.82 acres total. Currently on the property, there's several outbuildings, single-family residence, some cabins. There also is an active conditional use permit, 15-0228, for a detached garage with a loft. And the applicant is also requesting, as we stated, a comprehensive plan amendment. What you see on the screen is the current zoning, with that light green being general agriculture. The future land use for the subject property is plan unit development sensitive. Since the applicant is requesting it to go to limited agriculture, they need to change also the comprehensive plan, hence the amendment. Staff has no objections to the amendment request. This was routed through the interdepartmental review. No items of concern came back. One item to note is, as you can see, there is a huge section of, looks like possibly future roadway or some access that goes right through pretty much the southern half of the property. That was put in there by the National Forest Service in 1966 and recorded with the Register of Deeds. For some time, the applicant has been working with the Forest Service to basically remove that from the property. It is a time-consuming effort that is noted from the Forest Service personnel and the landowner as well. And staff has also been kept up to date on what is going on with that, and we'll find out what the next stage is going to be when they apply for the final plat, which is the last stage in creating the property that they're looking to create. As you can see, that the property is surrounded by general agriculture and public lands. To the east, that darker green, that's limited agriculture. Again, that's a 10-acre minimum, and that is what the applicant is looking to zone to. The applicant has requested to create a 10-acre tract out of the larger parent parcel, and with the denial of the lot size variance 1811, the applicant has chosen this route for the rezone. If the rezone is also denied, it basically stops the process for the applicant in creating this lot. With that, the staff and planning commission recommend approval of rezone 1810 and comprehensive plan amendment 1809.
Move for approval.
We got a motion. Is there a second? And a second from
Second.
Roskin, from
I just wanted some discussion.
LaCroix. Discussion.
Chairman,
1 second, Deb. Commissioner Roskin.
you're good.
PJ, is that one tax ID, that property?
It is.
So it looks like it's severed, or it looks like two lots, but it's severed by that easement that was put in place in 1962.
66.
So the easement's still in place, and they're working with the Forest Service to get rid of the easement. Is there a road in place? I see the easement, but is there actually a road or a right-of-way through that?
None that I know of. The only thing I know that's actually developed is that part of the driveway that goes down to the structure.
So that wouldn't have any impact on this plating process?
No, there was some concern with structures in that easement, but the applicant has been working with us to take care of that.
Okay.
Commissioner Adcock.
Yes, I was on the planning commission for this rezone. And my concern was, and I know PJ said the planning unit development sensitive, he didn't know why, and why that was put on there, and that there really is no plan unit development sensitive, but that also sends a red flag to me. When I hear plan unit sensitive or plan unit development sensitive or any development sensitive, there's usually an issue that made it that way. And I do see there was a Department of Environmental on page 6 of 8, and Natural Resources letter from Kent R. Woods-Menzie, dated May 18, 2015, indicating holding tanks were permitted with conditions. Can you tell me, PJ, has that been cleaned up, or what's happening with those holding tanks? Have they been taken off the property? Are they still being used? What has staff found out about that?
I'm sorry, you said you're on page 6 of 8?
Yes, sir. On page number 7 on the top of the page.
We have the septic permit pulled in 2015 for a guest cottage, of course.
There were some holding tanks, PJ, is what I'm looking at. Done in, dated May 18th, 2015, indicating holding tanks were permitted with conditions.
I still don't see that on page 7. Now
Page
now
6
we're going
of
on
8.
top of 6? Oh, okay. All right.
That's
Let's
okay.
see. Oh, thank you, I appreciate that. There's been no, I don't know if the holding tanks are still there, but there was no concern raised by the environmental planning supervisor or the environmental planner for those. They do have a current operating permit as of 2015.
So can Brittany update me? Is there septics there? Somebody's got to know where or what happened with those holding tanks. Have they been filled in? Meaning if there's no concern, obviously, did they redo the septic so those cottages and the outbuildings that they're going to be using won't be using holding tanks anymore?
I believe that they are using the holding tanks. I did go out there with our environmental planner, and I do believe that there are some, somewhat like drainage areas through there, and like wetter areas. So I think that there was a groundwater concern out there, if I remember correctly. Ron, is that, no, okay. And also, those cottages that are out there, I don't believe they are connected to anything, any kind of services whatsoever.
Yeah, there's nothing inside.
Okay, so they're still going to be used, Brittany, and are they not going to be used anymore?
I believe they are going to be used. It is a black and gray system. So the black water tank is the one that gets pumped, and the gray water system would be the one that's land applied during the summer months. And I
Okay,
believe,
so there's no, go ahead.
oh, I believe it was for that guest cottage or the guest cabin that was put out there.
Well, I'm going to guess that the plan unit developed sensitive, which is usually not used. Someone put sensitive on there, and I'm going to guess it's because of these holding tanks. And is it close enough? You said the groundwater is close to these. And did you find that this these holding tanks would be an effect on the groundwater in the area around it in the future, or did you find that they are safe?
The holding tanks typically are total containment, meaning that they don't leach at all, that they're pumped on a regular basis as they fill. The only things that would be land applied is the gray water.
Okay, so what have you guys done to legitimate that with making it not a concern for groundwater in that area?
Sure. So when it comes up in the 2015, they're issued an operating permit. So when it comes up in 2021, they'll be required to show that those tanks were pumped on a regular basis. They submit pump receipts to our office in order to be issued their new permit.
It's also part of the conditions of, or in the building permit for 150228.
Okay, and is it usual that we have holding tanks in those areas, or is it necessary, or can the DENR have them update that or not?
Actually, our ordinance is more restrictive as far as holding tanks. Typically, they are a means of last resort. We try to get some kind of system that's more conducive for longevity. Holding tanks become somewhat onerous on property owners because they do require pumping on a regular basis. They require alarms. They require more maintenance and, I guess, acknowledgement of their existence, so to speak. So we typically don't like to see those go in unless there's some kind of topographic, groundwater, or some other kind of restriction that doesn't allow a conventional system.
So in 2 years, can this system contaminate the groundwater extensively and still be able to be fixed if not done right with these holding tanks?
So my understanding of the reasoning for these holding tanks going in is this guest cottage was somewhat of a temporary nature. It wasn't a full-time residence. So like I said, they're total containment, so they would get pumped on a regular basis, so there's no like discharge of the black water to the ground. There should not be.
Okay, and is there any way you can do a conditional, I think that's why the conditional use permits were on there, to check up every year? There's no way to still put a conditional use to make sure those holding tanks are being pumped and the necessary things they're done every year. But PJ, you said something about that was put in a condition. Is there any way to check that they're getting pumped every year?
It was part of the building permit, and if the rezone and the creation of the new lot goes through, a conditional use permit will be required for the guest cottage. And in the staff report, as you can read, I don't believe that the landowner knew what was happening because the contractor he hired permitted for one thing and built something completely different. And the applicant did acknowledge that and is looking to correct that moving forward. As far as checking on it, we don't go out and check every holding tank in the county.
Well, we
Right.
do require pump records or some kind of contract with a pumping company that shows that it's being pumped on a regular basis. Holding tanks are difficult, that's why we don't encourage them, or they're a means of last resort, because everybody's usage is very different, so it could be pumped every week, every 3 days, every month, every 4 months. It's just difficult to anticipate what the correct pumping schedule would be for everybody's
So
use.
did we suggest, or legally, can we suggest that they need to update these systems so they don't have holding tanks? Or like you guys said, is it just a last resort?
I don't think the reason for putting the holding tanks in there, which is the ground, has changed.
Right, but I also believe that at the time that those were approved, it was of the understanding that this guest cottage was going to be limited in its use.
Okay, and it still will be limited in its use, you said, Brittany.
I don't know that. That would be probably determined through the conditional use permit process.
Okay, so I'll just wait for that and then we will be updated, or this will only go to the planning commission?
The conditional use permit would go to the planning commission.
Okay, if there could be something that would be said that was a concern of, I don't know if the commission, but a commissioner for future use of this land and basically groundwater concerns. Thank you.
Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
thank you, Commissioner Head. Commissioner Roskinek.
Brittany, holding tanks, normally people get those pumped when they fill up, because when they fill up, they no longer have a working septic system. And one thing that you could do, if it's an older system, it might not have an alarm. New tanks have an alarm that come on, so you get 200 or 300 gallons to warn you that it's getting full. So the only thing I could think of that might be an added safety mechanism was to have them, if they don't have alarms, to have alarms.
And they should, if they were put in 2015, have alarms. Our ordinance does require that. Like I said, one other thing is it is split out between black and gray, so the black water, it takes a lot longer for those tanks to fill than if they were combined. So there is.
On your gray water, though, it's legally permissible to use that as water your surrounding acreage because
Correct.
it's just gray water, so
Correct.
that's not a large concern to me, it's just the black water.
Commissioner DeSanto.
Mr. Chair, according to this, if there's any validity to this, due to the limitation of terrain, holding tanks will be used. So it sounds like they were the last resort.
I don't think the train's going to change.
Yep, and the train's not going to change it. And you said that there's changing levels of water in a particular area that probably couldn't facilitate a drain field anyway, so.
Correct. They would have to put either a mound or an evapotranspiration bed. Those get somewhat costly, and because this was considered seasonal or limited use, I believe that's why the holding tanks were put in.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Questions? Not, is there a motion?
Yeah, there was a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
Got a motion by Roskinek, a second by
There was
Commissioner
already a
DeSanto.
motion on the floor by DeSanto. There was already a motion,
Oh, yes, I
What's
did
the-
make a
what's the
motion, didn't I?
motion?
Yeah, motion
and then
to
Ross
approve.
next seconded it.
There you go.
Is that a motion to approve? Is that the?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Yes, it was.
Sorry, forgot that one.
That's okay.
Further discussion? Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
No,
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Item M.
Item M is rezone 1812 and comprehensive plan 1811 to rezone 19.419 acres from general agriculture district to general commercial district, and to rezone 1.953 acres from general agriculture district to general commercial district. The applicant's agent, Ken Nash, has applied for this rezone. There was a request for a lot size variance on this property, and it was denied by the Board of Commissioners in December of 2018. Also, this property, as it stands right now, is one lot. The Board of Commissioners did approve a minor plat for proposed lots 1 and 2 on December 4th, 2018. Both of those are zoned, like I said before, General Agriculture District. They are vacant of any structures with the exception of Lot 2, which runs along the frontage of Highway 16, which does contain 6 existing billboards. The surrounding property, let's see, the surrounding zoning is limited, or excuse me, General Agriculture District, General Commercial District, Highway Service District, Low-Density Residential District, Suburban Residential. Our future land use of this property within 1 mile is Low-Density Residential District, Highway Service District, General Commercial, and Suburban Residential. This was in front of our Planning Commission. The Planning Commission did deny this request without prejudice. Staff did recommend approval of this request. The reason being, oops.
Hello?
Sorry.
Yep.
I'm looking
We're
for
there.
that isn't the right. Yeah. I put it in there yesterday.
Sorry, hold on.
Commissioner Adcock, they're just trying to find it on the.
Trying to get up a
put it on the
different
screen.
screen. 2.5, no, go to 2.5.
Save on 2.4.
Yep. Okay. So when staff looked at this request, we looked at a couple of things along the Highway 60 corridor in order to request approval of this. This is the City of Rapid City's future land use designation, and they do have the future land use designation as this, as a mixed-use commercial zoning district. In addition, when we look at these, when we do our recommendations on zoning districts, we look at zoning districts that are in the area and along this corridor. And when we looked at the Highway 16 corridor, we looked at other areas that have similar types of zoning districts and uses in the area. So when we look down the Highway 16 corridor, when we were reviewing this, it looks like this is pretty common to have highway service or commercial with residential zoning districts abutting them. You can see along Strata Rim Drive in Wilderness Canyon, that's within about 2 or 3 miles east of this request. And then also, one thing to note, that Baker Timber Products is somewhat to the north and east of this request, which is a sawmill. It is in a general agriculture district at this time, but it was established in 1961 prior to our zoning ordinance. So it is a grandfathered use, and a sawmill is actually an allowed use in a general agriculture district.
1951, you
Or,
said?
no, 1961.
1961, okay.
Yes. And in addition, between now and the Planning Commission meeting, there was additional information submitted by the applicant. I believe Jerry tried to disseminate that information to you guys. There was some concern about using Pine Haven Drive as access to this subject property. It has been confirmed through the DOT that they will be using an existing access off of Highway 16. The DOT may require some improvements, such as a turning lane or other safety measures in order to utilize that access, depending upon what that property will be used for. So staff's recommendation still is for approval, but the planning commission recommended denial without prejudice.
Okay,
Chairman,
yes, Commissioner Adcock.
my motion is to approve.
We've got a motion to approve. Is there a second?
No, we have people that want to talk.
You'll get a chance to talk on it.
Second for discussion.
Got a second for discussion. Commissioner Adcock moved, DeSanto seconded. Further discussion. I'm going to call first of all on Ken Nash if he'd like to speak on this.
I'm Ken Nash. I'm the agent on this property. I'm just here to answer any questions you might have.
That might come to yourself.
Questions of
Okay,
Mr.
sorry.
Nash?
I don't have
Ken, a question relative to that existing approach off of Highway 16.
Yes,
That is an approved, authorized approach?
yes, it certainly is.
For the 66-foot wide. here,
Yes, and we
okay.
have a permanent easement through that on the current plat
There.
to access that property.
Okay? Because one of the concerns before the planning commission is that be using the road district road for access in and out of this property.
Yes, the only reason I put that, when I got this property to plat it out, was I put that driveway in so that Dr. Pankratz had access to that road district that he's been paying taxes on for 15 years and hasn't had access to. So that was the only reason for that. That's just a secondary access in case of emergencies. The main access is coming off of Highway 16. And I did go down and talk to Mike Carlson at DOT to verify that we could use that. The only thing that would have to change is if, it just depends on the use of the property. Then somebody might have to put an access in or a turn lane in to access that for safety reasons.
Questions of Mr. Nash? Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. Who would like to speak on this subject matter?
Morning, Commissioners. My name is Ryan Flick. I'm the adjacent landowner to the proposed commercial zoning area there. Yeah, if you look on maybe the next one.
There you go, I'll find something here. That'll probably be the best.
Okay. So if you look at that, I am in lot 13, which is just basically right on top of where the existing commercial area is in that area right there that is now zoned low-density residential. When that came up, obviously the access was an issue at the planning meeting. That was the main point of contention, was the planning of that. However, the size of that commercial entity also kind of came up, that doesn't fit within the comprehensive plan as it reads. And I read a couple things during that planning commission meeting that kind of spoke to that. It was just and I know you guys have done a change in that, or a proposed change for that usage, but a comprehensive plan can provide valuable information and guidance to those making important economic decisions, such as local officials, land developers, existing and prospective residents, employees, and business owners and operators. The first thing I wanted to talk about that was when most of us, me included, I bought out there 3 years ago. We looked at what the existing zoning was on that land that was adjacent to that. And we knew that it was, in the future, it showed on the comprehensive plan to be earmarked for low-density residential, which matches what the rest of the 83% of the surrounding area is to that. I feel that a change to that plan obviously would have changed my mind on where and why I would buy in that area. We will have some other people that want to speak to that, but when I was looking specifically at the commercial land use for the county, and I realized that this was proposed by the city, it says, large commercial development is unlikely to occur in areas outside of municipalities in Pennington County. The unavailability of central sewer greatly limits most kinds of commercial development. That would speak to this area specifically. It's more likely that any future commercial development that will take place in the unincorporated
unincorporated area will be smaller in size. The plan to change 20 acres is very, very large area for Rockerville area. There is a lot of commercial area in downtown Rockerville that has been for sale for many, many years. No one's ever purchased that. So that speaks to the idea that in the new comprehensive plan that has been proposed, it also says that those unincorporated areas need more housing. And I think that fits that mold more likely. Obviously, the Pine Haven Road District that runs through the back of that is a private drive, dead ends back there. It is considered a road district, but we maintain that. And obviously, the structure of that road is not meant for commercial traffic, and I realize now that it's been, DOT would recommend using the front access for that. But with that said, still the size of that commercial entity seems very large for the area, and obviously concerns the surrounding residents that would go against the initial comprehensive plan and how that land should have been used. I just said a couple other things that I found in the comprehensive plan on future land use for low density residential or future land use in general, is to ensure the quality, location, and type of commercial land uses are related to the needs and demands of the local population. We are specifically the local population. You mentioned Baker Timber. Baker Timber has been there for a long time, has not posed any problems for the most part to the residents in that area, given that the access is in a different spot. The existing commercial land that is right next to that is the Rockerville Lodge and Cabins. People involved, who I'm sure will speak on this, actually put in money to purchase that piece of land as it was dilapidated, and put special requests on what could be done with that. It was reopened last year and has operated this summer, being the first summer that it was in operation. I will tell you that being the adjacent landowner, I had 3 different times that I had to call the Pennington County Sheriff's Department based on the one commercial entity that's out there. First being a fireworks claim, which was, probably relatively common in that case. But the second 2 actually did have we had to have the Pennington County Sheriff out. We had a bullet go through our house, through our second floor of our house, went right down our stairwell and hit at the bottom of the stairs. We found a .30 caliber bullet at the bottom of the stairs. When we had the Sheriff's Department out there, it originated in the direction of the property. Can't say that it necessarily came from the lodge property, but did originate in the direction of the property. So that's of major concern, since my daughter at the time was sitting 3 feet from where the bullet came through the ceiling. The second issue that I have, we came home one afternoon and our neighbor to, just to the left of us, they actually share that boundary with the existing commercial entity. We saw a guest that was staying at that lodge in his backyard. Looked like he was urinating at the time. My wife headed up towards him. I got the kids out of the car, told them to go inside. We went up and talked to this gentleman, and my wife found that he was masturbating on a phone within public shot, right in view of my children. I have 4 daughters that obviously I, don't want them to see those kind of things. But police were called out on that one as well. I did speak to the foreman of that crew. This was supposedly after the closing of the cabins, but they were staying there. Evidently, he was looking for privacy because they shared a room and found that privacy on the back half of that lot. That just speaks to me that, increased commercial development in that area is going to bring that in a lot more. And obviously, I don't want to see more of that. I did not buy in that location for that reason, and I'd like to see that stay the same. It also says in that future land use to encourage the infilling of vacant residential land in order to promote the existing infrastructure, which right now would be the low-density residential. Provide for stable neighborhoods by minimizing adverse effects from conflicting land uses. To me, that one's huge. That says it specifically, that conflicting land uses can cause issues that we've seen. Ensure that residential growth takes place in an orderly and efficient manner so that public facilities and needed services can be adequately provided. There is that question of sewer and extra drain fields, things like that in our area, as some, Gary will speak on, with some of our sewer problems that we do have in that area, as well as our wells. We do have shared wells in that location. I'm actually on one of those wells, and it falls on my property with 5 other landowners. So we have seen differences in the well since the one commercial entity is opened at this point. Residential development should occur in areas where urban services such as adequate water and sewage disposal are accessible to the greatest amount of benefit, yet to the lowest cost to maintain them to achieve. Transition between types of land uses, especially between conflicting land uses, shall be orderly and efficient through the use of buffers such as increased setbacks, open spaces, fencing, and landscaping. I'll come back to that one, but ensure that all development is an asset to the community in terms of appearance and impact on community facilities and the natural environment. Like I said, I would come back to that portion where it says transition between types of land uses through buffers and increased setbacks. I will say that I think that if this was zoned commercially, that I would ask for maximum setbacks, maximum, coverage from that area, because I really do think that it would affect my quality of life as well as the neighbors in the surrounding area. So the future use plan is a big portion of what I look at when I look at that. Do you guys have any questions specifically for me?
Any questions? Commissioner Oskinek.
I made a site inspection last Sunday, and so if that was zoned low-density residential, then I'm just guessing, but 5 to 6 home sites could be platted.
Correct.
And I'm assuming that those homes, if they were to put homes on those home sites, they would not put them near Highway 16 where you got 10,000 cars a day on an average going through there. So they're gonna, technically they could go back within 25 feet of your property line.
Correct.
And technically, they could be developed with 6 homes, and those homes could be used for vacation rentals, and you're going to be right back to all these transients. They're going to be taxing your water system with 6 homes. It's been my experience that general commercial or some type of commercial, they're going to want to build closer to the highway. So they got that exposure to the general public. I would think that would be more favorable, in just my opinion, than trying to build a commercial enterprise 25 feet from your property line.
What probably spurred this more than anything was leading up to the planning commission that we had. It was the access from the rear point, which Mr. Nash did say that they did pay within the road district the taxes and stuff on that for many, many years and put that in. However, it hasn't been inspected at this point, and there is contention that should have been inspected by our road district because we are the road entity that's out there, and that was never done and has never been signed off on. So that's also a concern, is that hasn't been inspected or anything to this point. And I appreciate that you went out there and looked at that. Obviously, that to us meant that, that area for a commercial development is probably not the best usage to get people in and out of a commercial area. The second portion of it is, the plan that was proposed initially was to have the front acreage, from what I understand, zoned commercial, so Mr. Pankratz could keep his billboards there for future revenue for his wife, and that the back half of that would either stay as is, general ag, or be rezoned light density residential. Only after someone abstained from a vote on that was it put forward that both those areas would become commercial. So
It seems like a lot of the problem is transient. There's like 3 problems that have happened that's gone back to this one facility that you're talking about. I noticed through some research that 23773 Pine Haven Drive is a vacation rental. Are you guys aware of that? And I'm assuming
they got a variance from the commission to do that. I believe that was 3 years ago, 3 years ago, which was fought at the time too. But that's also one of the homes that shares the well that I have. And that is always the concern, is that if they're at the top end of that, 20 plus people using that portion of the well, can definitely affect everybody beyond that that's using that that well.
But if you had 6 of those, hypothetically, if you could develop that 19 acres into 6 residential lots, which would be low-density residential, they're going to want to be away from the highway, so they're going to get closer to you folks. And if those folks decide to do the vacation rentals like 23773, I just see water usage, septic, and they can operate year round, where most of the commercial along Highway 16 is 4 months, 4.5 months, and then they lock their doors. So I'm just trying to look at this both sides.
I agree, and I think that's why the planning board, voted that down, minus, obviously that there could be another option proposed in the, away from 2 commercial entities. Like I said, some of our other landowners can probably talk to this, but the commercial use was never a case for that frontage. Nobody had a problem with those 2 acres being zoned commercial use for those billboards or for something else being in that area. It's the size and the fact that 83% of it abuts low-density residential, which does usually have most of our lots out there. The smallest is a 3 acre lots. The rest of them fall 100% within the low-density residential. So yes, I mean, they would probably want to be closer, but they'd be limited by the 3 acres that they have, that they purchased and what's been developed in that area. So if that's the case, maybe 2 or 3 of the lots wouldn't sell, I don't know. But they would be limited by size.
Okay, we do have others that want to speak on this. Any other questions of Mr. Flick before you? Okay, who would like to be next?
Thank you.
Your
Good
name,
morning.
please.
My name is Michael Anderson, and I am one of the adjacent property owners there. So I'm wearing a couple hats. I'm also the Secretary Treasurer of the Stratmeyer Subdivision Homeowners Association. And my property, to point it out here, my property sits right here where that dot is there. And in 2012, I was denied a conventional septic system on that lot. And the reason that was given to me is that there was not enough soil up over the bedrock to support a conventional septic system. So, and what the problem is there is that the rock layers are not this way. They've been through volcanics tipped, so they sit like this. And so the concern was that the effluent coming out of this septic system would contaminate wells in that vicinity. So I never did get a conventional septic system on that property. A couple of years ago, we sunk a well right in this area right here.
Okay.
That sits just north of that subject property. And the plan was that we were going to use that to supplement our water system there, because we have several shared water systems there. And so the plan was to use that well to supplement that water system. The nitrates coming out of that well were extremely high. And we tried pumping it and tried doing things with it. And the nitrates never came down even close to where it could be used for human consumption. And we ended up abandoning that well completely because we couldn't use it. And the experts that we talked to thought that it was being contaminated by septic nearby somewhere. We could never figure out where that was coming from, but that was the problem. Also,
Excuse me, Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
When you said just north of the subject property, it's actually just north of the Guthmiller property, is it not?
Correct.
Okay.
north of the subject property here, and just north of the Guthmiller property
Okay,
there.
thank you.
And, and that Guthmiller property isn't real wide that direction. So there's not a lot of space in between there and the subject property. Also, another reason that they gave me for denying my septic system was because there were all kinds of past problems with septic in this area here on the motel, and that in the past, their own septic had contaminated their own well. And I guess they've done things to try to fix that, but septic is you can see septic is a huge issue in that area. Also, there is a shared well right up in this area here that's currently being used, and it services that lot and several across the road. It serves 5 different properties, including that vacation rental property that you're talking about. And we have noticed that the nitrates in that well have crept up. They were 5.51 in 2017, and after the motel got started again and got into business, it's been running about a year now, the nitrate level there is now in that same well is 7.83. We checked it in on August 30th of 2018. We can't prove that that's coming from that motel, of course, but you know, we suspect that the septic problems are getting worse there. And as we put more stuff in there, I think the septic problems could get even worse. I just, it's my feeling that if we make that into commercial property, we lose total control of what in the world is probably gonna go in there. We've really never been told what's gonna go in there. But it's my opinion that as a neighborhood, we're gonna lose control of that completely. If it was rezoned low-density residential, at least we'd have an idea of what was gonna happen over there. That may still cause us some problems, but, you know, in my opinion, we're willing to take our chances against low-density residential versus commercial where we don't have any control at all.
Mr. Chair.
Any questions?
Yes, Commissioner DeSanto.
I appreciate your concern with the water situation, the wells, the septics. That is all a valid concern. However, those concerns, correct me if I'm wrong, PJ, even if we rezoned, those concerns would be addressed upon such time that they ask for a building permit to further develop that property. If we find that that land is not able to handle that type of usage, obviously the commission and probably the planning committee would deny that building permit. Correct me if I'm wrong, PJ.
No, Commissioner Sano, you're correct. The only other thing I would add is if it's a commercial system, the state DNR also has to sign off on it.
So there lies some protection for you guys, even if it was to be rezoned as low-density residential, that is still going to be applicable. We're going to have that decision to make at that point in time. And as PJ just pointed out, the safety net is expanded because of the state having to get involved if it's commercial.
Well, like I say, it would be wonderful if it was left just the way it was, but I am, you know, I'm aware that something's probably gonna happen there and we probably can't stop it. But if there's gotta be some sort of improvement, I think I'm still inclined to go low density residential. At least we'd have people who actually lived in that neighborhood for generally speaking, who would be concerned like we are about our neighborhood.
Right.
Other questions of Mr. Anderson?
Yes,
Chairman,
Just 1 second, Deb.
Michael, that's really concerning, the nitrates. I just, you know, you see nitrates down in the valley, but not so much in the hills, and so I'd have to concur with you that that's probably coming from a septic. Have they ever tried putting dye in the septics, and then that's one way that you can trace?
Yeah, we
if a
tried that and we couldn't get a read.
Okay, how about what's the depth of the well?
The depth of which well are you talking
Well,
about?
let's just take one of the wells that you're getting nitrate.
Wayne?
It's 100, that well is 80 feet from the property line, and that well is 120 foot deep.
120 foot deep.
So I just wondered, is that an option? It's been my understanding that you can take a well and drill it deeper and try to get into a different fraction or fission.
And we could try that.
I just wondered,
At
120.
At $30 a foot, I think is what they're going for.
Well, yeah, it is, because I just put one in. I just wondered if you could go another 100 feet and just not have to handle, or water is so darn precious. I just wondered if, I don't know who your well driller was, but I would assume that this really doesn't have anything to do with the rezoning, but just having to put up those nitrates, you got my sympathy there.
You know, and we've talked about that particular issue that you're talking about, where we try to, you know, go deeper and see if we can, and see if we can do better on that. But it's a risk. It's like gambling.
Commissioner Adcock.
Sir, the last.
One second. Commissioner Adcock, I believe has.
Oh.
Go ahead.
So the vacation home rent at 2773 was an issue in this neighborhood before, and the nitrates in the wells, this was before, I think, even Lloyd's time. There were some issues, and then it was proven differently on some of those concerns. But just for that history on that, maybe it's changed, as one of the men have said, but back then some of the nitrates were caused by some of the septic issues. That was proven by the vacation home rental man when his vacation home rental had came up. On the rezone for commercial, Commissioner DeSanto is right. Number one, the DENR will be involved, but in commercial, you're using less water and less septic, in the sense, depending on what that commercial property is, than what you would use as low density residential. So if that's one of the concerns, I would say that I would, in my case, if I was worried about the wells and the septic, that commercial would be the better fit use there. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Adcock. I'll finish, Mr. Anderson.
I'm finished.
Who would like to be next?
My name is Merv Guthmiller, and I think you already know where my property is. It's let's see, show you here. Right there, the long narrow one that's right adjacent to this property that's being requested to rezone. And it adjoins Pine Haven Drive. Okay, right now, it's kind of neighborhood we have is quiet, safe, and it's secure. We have neighborhood watch there. And, you know, we know, we've had the same neighbors for quite a long time. We recognize strangers walking in. We recognize, for the most part, the vehicles that are in there. And, you know, since we've had the Rockerville Lodge in, that has changed to somewhat. We've got, you know, strangers walking up and down the area, so we don't really know who should be in that neighborhood or who shouldn't be for that purpose. And we think if it's going to go commercial on the property we're talking about here, is we're going to have a whole lot more of that. And I don't really see any way of controlling that. happening. The average assessed property value of the 4 homes adjoining that property is $638,000. The lots are selling for around $175 to $250. And if that would continue in low-density residential, I really would not think that it would be for vacation rentals at that kind of a price range and that kind of a home. I'm not sure of that. I'm not an expert on that, but probably wouldn't happen. So we just like to, just would really like to have it that my house is about 40 feet from that property. So I'm pretty close to what's going on. And I really would like to keep it low density residential. Ideally, I'd like to keep it agriculture, but we know that isn't going to happen. Have any questions for me?
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Guthmiller. Others? that wish
Mr.
to
Chair.
speak? Yes, Commissioner LaCroix.
PJ, could you indicate, just for confirmation, where that lodge is located on the map? It's to the north and east of the,
Which lodge?
it's right where the X is, right? Where the new lodge is?
Right here, right? Yeah,
that
that's what I
it?
thought, right there.
We read the,
It's that red?
Mm-hmm, general commercial.
I thought it was further up, I thought it was further north and east. Okay.
that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, next.
My name is Lon Buhner. I'm a property owner. I'm adjacent to the Murph Guthmiller property. I'd like to comment with regard to what I think is the best use of this subject property. That is, that I believe it should continue to be considered for low-density residential like you have in the comprehensive plan. And I'd like to just give you a little history. I moved into this subdivision in 2006. At that point in time, the Rushmore Motel was operating down in Rockerville. The large commercial property on the other side of 16 was an assisted living facility, and it was operating. Previously, before I moved in there, it had been a motel years ago. The large tourist attraction in Rockerville was vacant and was deteriorating. Shortly after I moved in there, the Rushmore Motel, which was operating down in Rushmore, closed. There was an article put together by the Journal that said you can buy a ghost town. Pat Hall bought that area, put it on the market in 2006. That property has been on the market since 2006, and it's still for sale today. So for 12 years, that commercial property has been vacant, and there has been no commercial development. The Rushmore Motel had closed, and I don't know the exact time, but prior to 2010, the assisted living facility closed. That property started to deteriorate. In fact, our neighborhood called it the Green Monster. There were broken windows. We had baseball-sized hail in 2010. The roof was not repaired, but it was on the market. It continued to be on the market. Bill Hearn is not present today, but he made a speech to the Planning Commission. He is an adjacent owner to that commercial property, about an individual that was looking at that property, and he went and talked to him, and he said, well, I'm looking at buying this property because I want to consider making it a place where convicted felons can transition to society. As a community, we got together and talked about this and said, look, if we have commercial property that's been vacant and it's dilapidated, and everyone that would come into our subdivision and say, what is that piece of junk you have on the right side of the road? It was a wake-up call for us, and we said, we don't control this property. We don't know what can be done with it. We sure don't want convicted felons in that area. So probably a dozen of us, maybe more, I don't know the exact number, We pooled together money and we bought that property. And we put restrictions, I think, through the deed on what could be done with that piece of commercial property. We retained that property for a little over a year, and then we sold that property. And we took a significant financial haircut when we sold that property. Significant, out of our pockets. But we felt pretty good about it because we had a kind of a problem area commercial property that we had believed we had dealt with. It was restricted with regard to what could be done with it. So what has happened since then is the Rushmore Motel, which had previously been sold to a private party for his use, has been combined with what used to be a motel that didn't make it, that became an assisted living facility that didn't make it and sat vacant, and now it has opened up as the Rushmore Lodge and Cabins. I am 100% convinced that the only reason that that property is open today and up and running today is the financial haircut that I and others took in it. Now, in hindsight, maybe we shouldn't have. I ask myself, was it worth it to me for the money I lost for what I got? And I convinced myself that, yeah, it probably was, except for the fact that I had no idea that perhaps we're opening up another 19 acres to 21 acres that could create the same kind of problem for our community. And when I look and see what has happened for the commercial property here, that original Rushmore Motel has been sold twice. The old motel, assisted living, and sat vacant has sold twice, and it's now up and running. I am glad that they refurbished the Green Monster. It took 2 years worth of refurbishment for them to open that. I went down and talked to the manager when they opened it, explained a little history to them and said, man, I'm glad you have that up and running. They said, yeah, and we plan on being open year round. Well, they didn't make it through the first winter. It doesn't surprise me that they didn't. So what you have seen is you still have commercial property for sale in Rockerville that's been available on the market for 12 years. You had that commercial property that, in my opinion, was saved by our community. And when you compare that with what has happened to the residential area, there were a significant number of undeveloped lots when I bought there in 2003. Since then, there's been a lot developed on average between once every 2 to 3 years. Right now, to the best of my knowledge, I only know of 3 undeveloped lots that are there. 2 of them have sold in the last 2 years, and there are plans for homes to be built there. So we're almost fully developed. So when I look at what has happened for the 15 years that I have been there, there has been zero growth on the commercial aspect, and there's commercial land that's been available there for 12 years, and there have been commercial properties that have not survived. Whereas we as a community have fully developed the residential area. And I do believe that when you take a look at platting, you can create fairly narrow, fairly lengthy plots, and you can get houses developed in low-density residential, I think, a significant distance away from Highway 16. Just my opinion. So I urge you to stay with the current comprehensive plan of low-density residential because that's what has worked. That's where the success has been. And the last thing that I think we need is more commercial property in the Rockerville area because, quite frankly, the tourism industry has left Rockerville behind. Thank you.
Any questions? Commissioner Oskinek.
I might add, if you look at let's go with the former hotel assisted living facility. The only person, to me, as an appraiser, that thing would have probably been worth more if they just burned the thing down and just had a piece of commercial land. But even with that commercial land, it would not be desirable to most of the folks that I know that want to get into the commercial real estate because it does not have direct access up Highway 16. You have to go down Pine Haven Road to get to it. So that's a big turnoff to a lot of folks that want that direct access off Highway 16, and that's the same problem with the stuff in Rockerville. They're not. When I was a kid, that main road through Rockerville thrived. When they took away that highway frontage, that's when it started going down the sink. So that piece of property, if they can get direct access off of Highway 16, it really lends itself for commercial. And I think as commercial, it would be very marketable. It's just a little bit different than the other two that you're talking about because of access issues.
Again, I don't know what's going to ultimately happen with that property. And I would say that I don't disagree with you, but I would also tell you that as an assisted living facility, they really did not need direct access off of 16, and for whatever reason, it did not financially survive.
The gentleman that bought that eventually bought it was Jim Meyer, and I called Jim up. I said, Jim, what are you going to do with the Green Monster? He said, well, Jim is a contractor, so they can buy these distressed properties and they can turn them into some. But even when I verified the sale with him, he says, I don't know what we're going to do with it, but I think him and Bill Gickling were partners at the time. And so I don't know if that restriction that you guys put on there, if that prohibited the current use, or I'm assuming the current use is a use that you guys allowed.
Yes, I assume so.
Nightly lodging or some type.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Brunner. Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Lana Breckus, and my husband would be here too, but he's at physical therapy. And we have lived in the Pine Haven area off of Earl Court for almost 24 years. We were one of the very first homes out there. The road was gravel, it was private. We have been blessed with wonderful neighbors. Our home is right there, okay? We back up to Baker Timber. The reason there is no problem with Baker Timber is all this area is forested, okay? Up here is where the sawmill is, backing away. That's not a problem. Right here, this lot just sold to a gentleman. I don't know if he's here or not, but he's planning to build a beautiful home, an expensive home. He started to cut trees. Now, this has happened, and what do you think he's going to think with, and I can't conjecture what he's going to think, but I know that that's a bad thing for his property. We live right across the street from Michael Anderson, and they've had problems. We are on this same well. Since the motel opened, for the first time in 23 years, we got a bad well report and couldn't use our well water. We had to go through all kinds of hoops to make sure that it was clean and have it retested, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Now, I teach real estate licensing. I'm licensed through the state of South Dakota as an instructor. I teach a segment on planning and zoning. And what is in the textbook accepted by the South Dakota Real Estate Commission for licensing regarding zoning is that when you have a commercial property, there are buffers. There are areas for park, and then your buffer, your park area, then low-density residential. But there's steps along the way that you go between. You don't go from ag to general commercial in one big leap. This is a nationally instructed book, and I know Mr. Roskinick is licensed, and I'm sure he has read that chapter. But I also ask, or I just feel that we all feel here you've made up your mind to approve this. And I just don't understand why. The county commission is interested in taxes that will contribute to the county coffers. If this is subdivided, low-density residential, we're going to get, what have you said, 5, 6 lots? And the homes that are going to be built there, our surrounding area homes, as they said, vary between, the average there, 680 some thousand. They're not going to build something in that area at the lot prices that are so inexpensive. Okay? They're not going to put a small house on a $150,000 lot. They're going to put a nice house there, and there are going to be 6 of them. And those houses will be taxed accordingly to their square footage and value. I would think that the county would raise more money in their coffers to allow that to be low-density residential. It's in the county's favor. The county comprehensive plan said that this is the way to go, low-density residential. We don't mind about the billboards out front. That's great. Also, the previous commissioners voted to deny this. They looked at it, they went out there, they saw what it was going on, and they voted to deny. With prejudice, I understand. Without prejudice, I understand. So you could look at it. But it's not the right thing for this lot. We have a critical issue with water. We have a critical issue with septic. And I really would appreciate your kind consideration to zone this low-density residential. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Roskinek.
I always try to find common ground, and you're right, it is general commercial, directly abutting residential.
Little hard of hearing, so.
I guess the question is, if you look up there and you see the yellow, that's low-density residential. So to the left, where I'm looking, you have low-density residential, and then to the north, abutting that, you have, is that highway service, PJ? The pink?
The pink or purple is highway service, correct?
Okay, so then on the other slide,
It's different on your screen.
you
This is all
have
Highway 16 here.
a lot of low-density residential abutting highway service. So
What is that? What's he talking about?
You're talking about here, or?
yeah, anywhere where the yellow touches the pink, that is a transition from highway service zoning.
We're across the highway and down a hill. We're in one of the affected lots, the outlined in red. And we are so far removed from that. The gas light burned down, and we didn't even know it. My husband and I went to the grocery store the next day and thought, what the heck? Where'd the gas light go? So we were not even aware. That's how much buffer. So this is right next. Where is this little thing? This is right almost on top of Guthmiller's, Buhner's, Flick's, and Hearn's property. And you can't tell me that people aren't going to go, if they go in on Highway 16 here to general commercial property, to a tourist trap or whatever it is, and they're going to look around the parking lot and think, ooh, let's go over here and look at all these houses. That's going to damage our road. It's going to be a safety issue for our neighbors who are very physically active. There's lots of children out there now riding their bicycles.
And the point that I was trying to make is a compromise, something less abrasive than general commercial. That's the point that I was trying to make. That make that transition to low density from something less abrasive, but maybe something other than low density, a compromise.
So what do you recommend?
Well, when you look up there, there's an awful lot of low density abutting highway service on both slides. So
Yeah.
that's just an idea.
I don't understand your idea. I don't get it.
The compromise would
Chairman?
be, I'll let PJ maybe explain it.
Okay.
Commissioner Hadcock first.
Chairman, actually, it's on the future land use for about 7 years, and I guess I'm not comprehending. I'm with Commissioner Roskinek that best and possible use. If you go down Highway 16, it's a major arterial. Most of the time on major arterial, you do have buffers, and we found that out. Remember on 79 that you'd want commercial before you hit residential, and in that area that we just talked about, they did have commercial. And the man that was in that residential area on Black Cap reminded me that they do have commercial in that area. The alternative to put it into something else, or rezone it something else, becomes different uses, which I understand. And I don't think commercial, if you read through everything on commercial, is a bad fit for what this best and possible use is. So for a buffer of commercial into low density residential, is not usually the case. It's usually in the city, commercial into medium density residential. But in this case, the medium density residential part kind of goes into our commercial district for the county. So I believe the best possible use for this as well is commercial. And I do remember the residents, again, on the vacation home rental, and they said at that time the septic and the water was an issue, and then the vacation home rental man at 2773 proved that that was not the case. It was not going to affect the water system there that was already supposedly going to be affected. So I believe in property rights on both sides, but the bottom line here is what's the best possible use and who owns this land, and will it truly affect the people in this area, because it supposedly is supposed to have a different access as well. So I believe the best possible use for this land is general commercial based on the future land use. And if you look way up the top on page 7 of 8, that highway service from the city in 16, I believe, will keep coming down all the way through to commercial in the future. So if we're looking at future land use for the future, I don't think these areas, based on how much low density residential we have off of this 16, I believe in the future what's going to happen is we'll have more highway service and more commercial along this arterial. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hadcock.
May I ask how many of you have actually driven out and looked at it?
I think we all have.
I have.
All of you have?
Yeah.
I just don't understand when you drive in, drive in on Pine Haven, and you see that property on a map looks like it would be just peachy. But when you get out to the neighborhood and you see the homes and the quality of the neighborhood, and to put general commercial there is going to put probably half our homes up for sale. And what is that going to do to our property values? I just feel you have made up your mind before we got here. Your own comprehensive plan says low density. The previous commissioners said no. I
Chairman?
don't get it.
Mrs. Breckus, do you have anything new to add to it?
No, I don't, but
Okay.
I'd like you to explain why.
Commissioner Adcock?
Chairman, the planning commission had denied without prejudice, thinking that it could be something else. But if you look again at what can be out there, this is a rezone. At this point, when they come in, if someone comes in with commercial and it says on commercial right here, retail establishments, basically storage, display, and sale of new and used, repossessed and traded merchandise, barber, beauty shop, schools, cleaning, dye, and laundry, medical and dental clinics, hotel, motel, rooming, clubs and lodges, eating and drinking, offices, studio, clinics, and laboratories. Sometimes those can be benefits depending on what it is in a neighborhood. And in this rezone, at this point, we can limit that as commissioners of what goes in there if it doesn't fit. And the commercial, as Mr. DeSanto has, the commercial septic and water issues can be addressed at that time too to prove that this land stands on its own. So again, I think the best possible use based on this is everybody in this development might not be on the same board as this. Depending on what goes in there, I think it could be a possible positive for the people in this area. So at this time, it's a rezone and we don't know what's next.
Thank you, Commissioner Adcock. Mr. Flick, I'll let you speak again, but I want to make sure everybody that wants to speak has had a chance to speak first. Anyone else?
3 minutes here, okay? My name is Wayne King. I'm the guy that tests our wells, and I also troubleshoot our wells. Okay, we've done it. I know these wells inside and out. On your question about dye in the wells, we did that to our wells. But according to Mark Armstrong of the United States Geological Survey, that test has no credibility at all. It takes up to a year for it to flow through and everything. And so I'll leave that at that we have tried everything. What I'm worried about is that, okay, the county ordinance is septic systems can be within 100 feet or 150 feet of a well. It depends on the depth of the wells. And I'm worried that, that they're going to throw this at us if something moves in there and wants to put a septic system in. You know, they can apparently put it within 100 or 150 feet of our wells. Now, the back side of that property is all sloped down towards our wells, and our and that one well is 80 feet away, and the other one is like 250 feet away. I mean, if it's a commercial buildings go up there, they're naturally going to put the septic systems on the back side of their business, which slopes down to our wells. That's as brief as I want to be. And okay, thank you.
Mr. Oskinek.
A septic system is different than a holding tank.
Yes.
To put a septic system in, they're going to have to dig an 8-foot profile hole, and then subsequent to that, they'll have to do 3 perk. And if those soil conditions, whether it's residential or commercial, they're not going to put a septic system in. And PJ can go into more detail if we need to explain that. But there's very strict parameters that you have to follow before. That's why I think Murph said he's got a mound system, and a lot of folks out there might have holding tanks, because the last thing we want to do is screw people's water up, whether it's commercial or residential.
Okay, thank you. That was the ordinance I was very scared of.
Thank you. Mr. Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, my name's Ray French, and I'm kind of interested in buying this property. And I myself went out, I'd done 9 perk tests, 3 profile holes in this property. I never found the slate they were talking about. I found a lot of gravel, and my perk tests were 11 on two holes. The rest of the holes were above 8. So I'm just kind of giving you an idea of what I found. I didn't find anything they're talking about. So I don't know what, they must be in a different area for their slate to run into their wells or whatever, you know. I did this for my own good, because property's no good if you can't put septic system in.
Right, when you did those perk tests, that land's got some variables, so were you more in the
I did three.
were you more in the open pasture area?
Oh,
Or?
I did 3 in the bottom by, little guy's house over here, Merv, is that his name?
Yep.
And, I did 3 right up by the signs, and then I did 3 over where the driveway was. And then all the profile holes I just dug with a backhoe, 8 foot deep, and I never found any slate, you know, so. But I'm just trying to say, I'm kinda interested in the property, but I don't know if, you know, if they're having all these problems out there, I was just wondering, does the county know about all these problems? I mean, you know, county went around, rechecked all septic tanks, you know, and all that. I'm just wondering, well, if these problems are there, maybe the property isn't worth anything. I'm just trying to figure, you know, I'm trying to see if it's worth buying. But if these guys are having all these problems, I don't know, I don't think I'm gonna have the problems because I checked it ahead of time. You know, I'm just trying to tell you that, but
Okay,
thank you.
thank you, Mr. French. Mr. Flick.
Sorry about that. Thank you. My follow-up question with that would be, is that access from Pine Haven Road? That has been given. That was given under the assumption that that was general ag at the time or agricultural. What happens to that access point off Pine Haven?
My understanding, that'll only be used for emergency ingress and egress, and other than that.
How is that regulated? For
DJ?
usage? Because if you give somebody rear access to that road district, that's gonna affect that.
The road district. From listening to the comments about the road district, I think they might benefit by doing a little research into what a road district responsibilities are. The sheet that we got for the approach permit contained comments from the road district, and then after a approach is built, then the road district inspects it. Once we receive the document from the road district approving that something can be done, it's in the road district's hands after that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And so, Mr. Flick, you're not aware that the road district has done the inspection? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Correct. There has been no inspection by the road district. Bill Hearn is the president of our road district, and there has been nothing done. All that's been done to this point is a crappy little culvert's been put in, covered by some stuff. Can't even tell if it's necessary. It's on my land. I have an easement to that point, but it's right adjacent to my land. Had to take up the front corner of my land, which runs right up to that. What I'm saying is the access is the big issue for me. If something goes in there, will that access go away, given the fact that that was put in at the time based on the current plan? Either low-density residential or ag.
Chairman,
Yes. Commissioner Adcock.
can Ken Nash answer some of these questions that have came up?
Ken's coming forward.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, that access can be changed or removed as needed. We don't have a problem with that. It was just simply to gain access to land that he's been paying for 15 years. That's all it was for.
Okay, Commissioner Adcock, did you hear that?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken. Any questions of Mr. Flick? No. Thank you.
Can I just ask what the process would that be to get that taken out?
This is road district, isn't it?
Sounds to me, Mr. Flick, like it's up to you as part of the road district, those of you that part of the road district to request that to be done.
Okay, thank you.
In addition to road district comments, it's also in a section line. So it did appear before the board for the construction.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, PJ. We're back to the motion. We have a motion on the floor and a second to approve. This would be the first reading. Further discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
DeSanto,
No.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item is N.
Item N is a request for a motion to schedule a special Board of Commissioners meeting regarding Kroll's Incorporated applications for mining and construction permits. The Planning Commission has decided on a special meeting to be held on Wednesday, May 8th, 2019, in these chambers, and it will start at 9 o'clock. That is the only meeting that they scheduled. The request is that the Board of Commissioners schedule a special meeting or meetings on Friday, May 10th, 2019, and/or Saturday, May 11th, 2019, as I believe those dates are chosen from the commission manager as the dates closest to the Planning Commission meeting that she knows that the Board of Commissioners will be here in its entirety.
Thank you, PJ.
You're welcome.
The Planning Commission determined that they will complete theirs in that one-day timeframe, May 8th.
My, Chairman,
Yes.
my
Commissioner
only
LaCroix.
comment is we are pushing it because we do have that conference the following week. So, you're looking at Friday at 9 a.m.?
Yes, sir. We have to have a 24-hour turnaround time to meet statutes with posting agenda materials and public notices. So if the planning commission can get it done in one day and staff can get everything put together and posted by 9 o'clock Thursday morning, the board can go Friday morning at 9. And hopefully push through. If you don't get done on Friday, I don't see anything wrong with going Saturday morning.
No, I don't see that either. I knew that with all the stuff that's gone on, that was a possibility.
And
But
yes, we lose the majority of the board that following week, as 3 of you are going to a conference.
Yeah.
And then the following week, I thought I had a commissioner out, but now looking at my calendar, I don't. So I don't know if you guys want to go the following week after. I mean, but then again, that's another 2-week delay for them. So if we could get it done Friday, Saturday, just an option for the board.
Yeah. Everybody's okay.
What's the feeling of the commissioners?
What's the date?
May 8th is when the Planning Commission plans on having their hearing.
May 10th.
They have committed themselves to continuing that meeting into that evening if required in order to complete it. And so we're looking at Friday, May 10th for the commission. No time has been set on that, but 9 a.m. would probably be ideal. And then if we can't complete it in that one day, that we would come back on Saturday, May 11th.
I would make the motion to do May 10th at 9 a.m.
Second.
Got a motion and a
Second for
second.
discussion.
Go ahead, Commissioner Hadcock.
Sorry, I just seconded, Chairman, for the motion. Sorry.
Okay. Discussion.
Chairman, I didn't include the September 11th,
May 11th.
Saturday, for a follow-up in my motion, but I'd like to make a friendly amendment to that 11th if we needed. If the
Okay,
second,
Commissioner LaCroix would like to add the 11th to that.
That's okay.
Commissioner
with the second.
DeSanto, you're okay with that? Okay.
Yes.
So the motion is that we start our meeting at 9 o'clock on May 10th, Friday, and if need be, that we continue it on to May 11th.
same time, 9 o'clock.
Any more discussion? Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye, motion carried.
Thank you.
Items from the commission.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, Commissioner DeSanto.
Got to attend, I'm sure many of you did, several events at the Black Hill Stock Show. The whole stock show, in my opinion, went fantastic. The ranch rodeo was sold out. The following morning, we had Bronx for breakfast, huge crowd at Bronx for breakfast. Ron Jeffries made an announcement, and I'm not going to try to even attempt to name the rodeo that we're having here, but it's a large national event.
Bronx, Extreme Bronx.
What's that?
Extreme Bronx.
Extreme Bronx, and it's going to bring a huge economic benefit to our community. I'm sure that the fair, the staff at the fair will make sure that it goes without a hitch, and my guess is that will just be a launch pad to additional events that we will wind up having out at the fairgrounds and at the Kerstad Event Center. So I just want to give kudos to the staff out there for bringing that event to Rapid City and Pennington County, and wish them luck as far as running it smoothly and bringing additional events here.
Thank you, Commissioner DeSanto. Commissioner LaCroix.
I'd like to thank, we're gonna do committee reports, our end items, same thing, yeah. The vision funds that the city did was a great turnout, and one of the boards that I'm on, YFS, had received second ranking for priority in our community, which is great, and I think they funded a lot of stuff that was great that's gonna happen into Rapid City, and I appreciate not only the board that narrowed it down, but also the city council for rummaging through that and picking the priorities for our community. One of the other things I've done was I attended the community health board meeting, and as we're talking about mental health problems, they were doing a wing, finishing off a wing at community health for mental health, and they're looking for a nurse practitioner to help into that. Right now, it's just in the framing phases of it. Unfortunately, community health did lose out in the vision funds, trying to get some money for a shop for the facility, but things will work out. So that is in the plans, and it's still moving forward for community health to deal with mental health problems in our community. So, of course, they can't hire a licensed physician. I mean, the costs are too big, but they're working in the community to find that one specialist that could sign off when you have the practitioners. So they're in the process of looking for that. With that, I think I'll just close.
Okay, Commissioner Roskinek.
Well, I made my first committee meeting, compensation. And it was real short, it was about a half an hour, and the two things that they discussed were the bylaws, and we talked about those today, and maybe changing the date that they meet so that it would accommodate one of the commissioners, better accommodate his other work duties. And I did get a tour of the CARE campus. Jim Hansen and Barry Tice walked me through the entire project with it. We didn't go upstairs, but until you walk through there and touch and feel, you don't realize how nice of a facility it is, and some of the benefits that it's doing to the community.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner DeSanto.
Further, I also would like to compliment the Highway Department. They included me in a meeting regarding this equipment purchasing and getting on a good rotating schedule. And it was very in-depth. It was very well thought out. And so I appreciate being included on that, and I will continue to be included on that. There was also a situation that was forwarded to us, didn't have to come before the commission, but there was a situation out off of Radar Hill Road where there was some goose hunting going on extremely close to homes. I met with Brian Mueller and the Department of Fish and Game, as well as the homeowner that has been affected, and we seem to have come to a good solution to try and keep that from happening any longer. It was news to me, and it may be news to all of you. You know, when you're out hunting pheasant, there's a restriction on how close you can be to a home when you're firing a gun. When you're hunting goose, strangely enough, there is no restriction. As long as you are below, within the high water mark of the lake or meandering stream, you can fire a weapon 60 feet away from a house, which to me doesn't make much sense. But I think we've got that. I think we came up with some solutions to get that resolved so that that won't be happening any longer. So, thank you.
Commissioner Adcock.
Thank you all. As the chair, as Gary knows, Gary has filled in a couple times for me, but we're working hopefully with the fire department and Ron Ross Connect in the future for the levy. I had missed the city county meeting. I had stuff for my surgery that was coming up. So Gary had taken time to do that with Mayor Allender and Becky Drew, two really good people from the city to work with. So maybe he could give an update on that. And then committees, most of them in my direction, I have went to the fair and some of the fair events, missed some of those because of surgery too as well, but they always put on a really good show. Went to the bull riding, that was amazing. Ron Jeffries and his board and his people that work with the fairgrounds are amazing at what they do. So anytime you can go see what happens at our event center and at the Civic Center for the stock show, it's amazing the tax dollars that are brought in from country folks or rural folk. And it just shows that city and county work well together in order to make a great event. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Hadcock. I did attend several different meetings. Healthcare Trust Board, met with them earlier this month. They're aggressively looking at options of containing healthcare costs without losing benefits. I also attended the Rapid City Area Chamber meeting, at which time they voted to move forward to becoming a unit under Elevate. They'll continue to work out legal and accounting issues before this will be finalized. Elevate would be the umbrella for several programs, including economic development. There's been a tremendous amount of work put into this during the past year and appears to be a strong method for moving forward many programs in the future. I also met with the City of Box Elder to discuss their proposal to apply for a build grant for portions of Radar Road and then Highway 14 and 16 through Box Elder. They asked if we had an interest of joining them in this project, primarily to complete all of Radar Road. This was strictly initial discussion, and Box Elder will flesh out the details and keep us up to date on the status of that. And I also participated in the Metropolitan meeting with Rapid City and Box Elder. Again, Box Elder simply reviewed the beginning of the process for the Radar Road potential project because eventually they would request a letter of support from the City of Rapid City. And that's all I have. I would add on that, on meeting with Box Elder, I just did have Joe Miller and Mark Schock along with me on those initial discussions too.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner
I agree with Mark. It was, I had an opportunity to meet personally with Mark and Joe, and we spent probably 45 minutes on the road grader and the trucks, and that just made today's job so much easier, understanding the dynamics and the thought process. So I agree with Mark in the future on a larger purchase like that or a larger item, that if we can sit down as a commissioner one-on-one and so that we understand it before we get here, we can just make these meetings go that much more faster.
I agree. I like the scheduling them out. I think that's a big step forward. So,
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner DeSanto.
One other thing that I had a resident contact me that's an owner of two different homes on Jim Road. Jim Road is between Pioneer Road and the new development that went out up there behind the Common Sense on Highway 44, kitty corner from West River Electric. And it's a short section of road, maybe 100 yards long. It's all gravel. And their concern is that there are now many vehicles and UPS and garbage trucks using that as a shortcut to get into that neighborhood rather than utilizing the light. So I've contacted Joe to find out what our basically responsibility is on that short section of road. I did go check it out, and it does look like it's getting torn up pretty bad. And so we need to find out who's responsible for that, if it's us or the city, and whether or not we need to get something done to prevent all that vehicle. It wasn't built to handle that type of vehicle traffic.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner DeSanto. Approval of vouchers.
Move for approval.
Got a motion to approve the vouchers in the amount of
Second.
$880,076.34, and a second from Commissioner Roskinek. Any discussion? Call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye, motion carried. Items from the public? Unless the Rapid City Reporter has something. Okay, we're a little light on the public right now. I don't believe we need to have this executive session. We do? Okay. I would take a motion then to go into executive session.
Move to go into an executive session.
Okay, and this
Second.
involves a personnel issue. In a second, call the roll.
DeSanto,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye, motion carried. We're in exec session.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Got a motion and a second to go back to regular session?
To come out of executive.
Correct.
Yep.
All in favor? Aye. Oh, sorry.
Yep, roll call vote.
Oh my God, I don't know alphabetical order. DeSanto,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Hadcock. Deb, are you
Aye.
there? Okay.
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
Drews.
Aye, motion carried. We're back to the agenda, and that's simply to adjourn. Is there a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adjourn. We'll call the roll.
LaCroy?
Aye.
No, I'm sorry, DeSanto.
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Hadcock,
Aye.
Ross Connect,
Aye.
and Drews.
Aye.